Chapter 102. Not long after, Blood Moon's camp welcomed another uninvited guest. When Lung Shiqi appeared in Delta Origi's tent, Delta Origi did not feel surprised at all. She was even a little used to it. However, when they subconsciously probed the other party's cultivation, they all exclaimed, "7th level of the pure spirit realm?" That's right, Delta Origi's cultivation had also reached the 7th level of the pure spirit realm. In fact, Lung Shiqi still had some thoughts in his mind before he came. In his memory, ever since Delta Origi obtained the first cultivation method, her cultivation had risen at a terrifying speed, and Lung Shiqi's cultivation had always been lower than Delta Origi's. Even after Delta Origi broke through to the pure spirit realm, he had just reached the 8th level of the spirit gathering realm, and the gap between the two was getting bigger and bigger. Before entering the dungeon, Lung Shiqi finally caught up with Delta Origi's footsteps at the 6th level of the pure spirit realm. A day ago, when Lung Shiqi forcibly broke through to the 7th level of the pure spirit realm by refining the spiritual ruin Beast King's demon blood, he felt that he had finally surpassed Delta Origi. But he never thought that Delta Origi would also cultivate to the 7th level of the pure spirit realm. Similarly, Lung Shiqi also brought Delta Origi a lot of surprise. But just as the two were staring at each other, a figure appeared outside the tent and asked softly, "Moon Master, what's the matter?" Delta Origi restrained her surprised expression and said coldly, "Nothing, you can leave." "Yes." Lung Shiqi asked softly, "When did you break through?" "Just these 2 days," Delta Origi said, her eyes staring at Lung Shiqi as if they could speak. Lung Shiqi could only say, "What a coincidence, I also broke through in these 2 days." "You didn't come here to show off, did you?" "Ahem, of course not. I have something urgent to talk to you about." Lung Shiqi's face darkened, and his tone became more serious. Seeing this, the Delta Origi said seriously, "Let's hear it. Let me ask you first. How are the demonic beasts on your side?" "With me around, they won't be able to do anything," the Delta Origi said calmly with a hint of arrogance in her tone. Lung Shiqi narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "That's good. Let's talk about a deal. I have an extremely important piece of information that I can share with you. This information is even related to your life." Delta Origi's expression changed, as if judging the authenticity of Lung Shiqi's words. Then she said, "What do you want?" "I want your spirit technique that can hide your cultivation." Lung Shiqi raised his eyebrows slightly and said what he wanted. Lung Shiqi also felt that his cultivation at the 7th level of the pure spirit realm was indeed a bit eye-catching. These 2 days, he had been deliberately suppressing the strength of his strength. Fortunately, he had made his moves in front of the Yushu clan. Those spirit-gathering realm spirit cultivators couldn't sense how strong he was, and Yushu, Hualingling, and Blood is no different wouldn't brazenly sense his cultivation. Therefore at present, other than the Delta Origi, no one knew his true cultivation. Therefore he turned his attention to the Delta Origi. If he could hide his cultivation, sometimes it could have a miraculous effect. Delta Origi revealed a playful expression and said, "So that's your idea. Actually, my breath-restraining technique isn't a spirit technique. To be precise, it's a secret technique. It only changes the way the spirit energy flows. It's not that brilliant." "It doesn't need to be brilliant, as long as it's practical," Lung Shiqi said indifferently. "This secret technique isn't that precious. If your information is valuable enough, you can take it at any time. So you've agreed. You can tell me your information." A few days later, the sudden riot of the demonic beasts caught all the spirit cultivators of the Blood Mist Island unprepared. Everyone was in a state of panic. However, the Yushu clan was one of the exceptions. What was strange was that at this time, all the members of the Yushu clan were gathered in the desert camp. Yushu passed down one order after another, and the few pure spirit realm spirit cultivators under him also carried out their duties. The entire camp was operating quickly in an orderly manner. Tomorrow was the time for resources to erupt, and it was also the time for them to take action. Lung Shiqi asked Yushu who was beside him. "Everything has been arranged, right?" "Don't worry, I've already given the orders. Everyone knows what they have to do. Mu 21 and the others have also gone up the mountain to find a suitable place. They should be back soon. Yushu spoke seriously at this time. He had always been at ease with Yushu's arrangements, so he didn't ask too much. Let everyone rest well today. Tomorrow will be very tiring. Understood. The next morning, all the members of the Yushu clan, more than 100 people, stood in an orderly manner. They didn't bring any food or water with them, and all of them went into battle lightly. Everyone's face was filled with killing intent. Yushu stood at the front, and behind him was a row of pure spirit realm spirit cultivators, including Lung Shiqi. After a careful count, there were as many as 13 people. Ever since the puppet battle at the wetland, the Yushu clan had not been stingy with the distribution of cultivation resources. In addition to the recent few battles, there were several people who had broken through to the pure spirit realm. Yushu rubbed his hands and whispered to Lung Shiqi, "Why am I still a little nervous?" "Since that's the case, then don't go," Lung Shiqi replied snappily. "Hee, I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding." Yushu then shouted loudly, "Brothers, let's go." With Yushu's order, more than 100 people immediately took action and rushed towards Wind Valley. There was only a group of scattered desperados in Wind Valley, and most of them were from forces that had already been destroyed. In order to fight against the rampaging demonic beasts, they had no choice but to form a temporary alliance. But today, when the cultivation resources were erupting, they began to argue with each other. Just as they were arguing and spitting everywhere, they heard orderly footsteps coming from afar. They turned around and saw more than 100 people from the Yushu clan charging towards them aggressively. How could this motley crew have any thoughts of resisting? They immediately scattered like monkeys on a fallen tree, each one running faster than the other. However, the Yushu clan did not chase after them. Instead, they directly barged in to plunder the resources. Unfortunately, there were not many precious resources here, so their harvest was limited. Coincidentally, a loud noise came from the sky and dozens of resources of various colors erupted. Lung Shiqi and Yushu looked at each other. They each led half of their men and moved separately, beginning to quickly plunder all the resources that had fallen into Wind Valley. In order to be quick, they only plundered the resources and did not kill anyone. Of course, if someone acted recklessly, they could not blame anyone else. Soon Lung Shiqi and Yushu met again. They then charged towards the next area, the depression. In the depression, there was a force called the Peak to Society that occupied this area. They were not weak at all. After the resources erupted, the members of the Peak to Society split up to search for resources. At this moment, the Yushu clan suddenly charged in like a ferocious dragon crossing the river, directly attacking the Peak to Society's camp. The Peak to Society's president, Bai Langtao, was also at the 5th level of the pure spirit realm. He was not weak at all, but he was no match for Lung Shiqi and Yushu. The two of them immediately joined forces and charged in, killing Bai Langtao in just a dozen moves. Without a leader, the others instantly panicked and fled as far as they could. The Yushu clan did not chase after them either. They only cared about plundering the resources wantonly, and finally swaggered off. Then the entire Yushu clan turned back like a swarm of locusts and plundered the resources that had fallen on the sand, the withered forest and the misty area. In the end, they all gathered at the withered forest's camp. Chapter 103. On this day, the Yushu clan plundered the resources of 5 regions like a madman, shocking and infuriating the other factions. They were shocked that the Yushu clan had such a crazy decision and terrifying strength. They were infuriated because they were powerless. Especially the people of the Peak to Society. Their president had been killed by Lung Shiqi and Yushu, who had snatched the resources that they had collected for a long time. Furthermore, they had run away after snatching the resources, while they could only watch helplessly. The Yushu clan's hooligan-like actions filled them with righteous indignation, and they even shouted that they would join forces with the other factions to destroy the Yushu clan. However, no one was willing to provoke such a powerful and shameless person. Just as the various factions were considering how to guard against the Yushu clan's shameless actions, an even more shocking piece of news arrived. The Yushu clan had actually openly sent people to build a camp in the mountains. Their first reaction when they received the news was that the Yushu clan had not gone mad, but had truly lost their minds. The demonic beasts on the Blood Mist Island had already gone berserk, and it was already very good for everyone to be able to protect their own land. The mountains were also viewed as forbidden grounds, and no one dared to go up the mountains to collect food and water. However, the Yushu clan actually dared to openly build a camp in the mountains. Crazy, crazy. Just as everyone thought that the Yushu clan had gone mad, the Blood Moon also made a big move, and what they did was exactly the same as the Yushu clan. First, they plundered the resources of the nearby regions, then went up the mountains to build a camp. If the Yushu clan had gone mad, then did they also go mad? This could not be a coincidence. The various factions had a vague feeling that there was something fishy going on, especially Hungming. He knew that Yushu and the Delta Origi were people who would not do anything without benefits. There had to be a special reason for the two of them to do such a seemingly crazy thing at the same time. Meng Ming sat alone and did not say anything. He closed his eyes and pondered. After a long while he suddenly opened his eyes and murmured, "This is a signal." Thus, Meng Ming summoned all the pure spirit realm spirit cultivators under him, and gave out one shocking order after another. At this moment, everyone was guessing the intentions of the Yushu clan and Blood Moon. The entire Blood Mist Island seemed to have become even more tense. At this time, Lung Shiqi was wearing a black gold mask and sitting on a wooden stool. There were 30 to 40 people around him who were busy clearing the area and setting up camp. With Lung Shiqi personally overseeing this place, there naturally wouldn't be any problems. If there were any problems, they would have already been solved. At the same time, on the other side of the hill, another group of people was doing the same thing. They were Blood Moon's people. Not long after, the Delta Origi arrived. When the two of them were far away, Delta Origi said directly, "Why did you make a move so early? If other factions noticed, they might also come up the mountain." When Lung Shiqi told the Delta Origi that the sky would fall again, the Delta Origi was also extremely shocked. The scene of the first sky fall was still vivid in their minds. At that time, they were lucky that they were in the inner region, otherwise they might not have survived. She didn't doubt the authenticity of Lung Shiqi's news because Lung Shiqi wouldn't, and didn't need to lie to her. At the same time, the Delta Origi also knew about Lung Shiqi's follow-up plan. However, she thought that Lung Shiqi would wait for a while before making a move. It would be best if they could snatch a large amount of resources before the sky falls, and then let the majority of the people die. Then they could basically monopolize all the resources on the Blood Mist Island. However, she didn't expect that Lung Shiqi would make a move so early. He even went up the mountain to build a camp, as if he was afraid that others wouldn't know. Lung Shiqi replied, "No one knows when the sky will fall again. We can't delay. Moreover, it takes time to build a camp and move resources. These things can be done in 2 or 3 days." The Delta Origi wasn't satisfied with Lung Shiqi's explanation. Lung Shiqi glanced at the Delta Origi and said, "Then you want everyone else to die in the sky fall? Isn't that good?" The Delta Origi's words were full of coldness. "It's very good. This way, we can reduce the number of competitors by more than half. But have you ever thought about what happened after the first heavenly collapse calamity? Corrosive rain fell from the sky and rank 1 monsters frequently appeared. Then after the second skyfall, do you think the Blood Mist Island will also have some unexpected changes?" The Delta Origi frowned and didn't say anything. Seeing this, Lung Shiqi continued, "After this skyfall, we don't know what kind of terrifying dangers will appear. There might even be rank 2 monsters. This small mountain isn't too big, but it's not small either. It can easily accommodate a few hundred people. Isn't it good to have so many people to help us share the unknown dangers?" The Delta Origi paused for a while before saying, "Your vision is further than mine, and your heart is more ruthless than mine." After saying this, the Delta Origi turned and left. Lung Shiqi shook his head slightly and returned to the Yushu clan's group. In the following days, the construction of the camp went smoothly. Moreover, a large amount of resources were moved here. It could be said that the Yushu clan completely abandoned the 3 areas they had already occupied, and moved to occupy an excellent place on the mountain. However, the Blood Mist Island wasn't peaceful these days. First, the Seiji imitated the Yushu clan and Blood Moon's methods. They swept the surrounding areas and went up the mountain. When the other factions saw that the Yushu clan, Blood Moon, and Seiji, the three strongest factions, gave up their territory and chose to go up the mountain, they were all a little panicked. They felt that something terrifying was going to happen in the inner area. However, they didn't dare to move their individual strength to the mountain. Thus, they joined forces and formed two alliances to force their way up the mountain. By now, 80% of the people on Bloodfog Island had gathered on the small mountain. Only a few people in the inner circle who were greedy for the next eruption of resources were still there. They even laughed at the people on the mountain for throwing away so many resources for nothing. 4 days later, they indeed waited for the eruption of resources. They could pick up all the resources as they wished. They were all incomparably excited. However, just as they were getting excited, the huge blood-colored light barrier covering the Blood Mist Island suddenly twisted. The blood-colored light barrier kept twisting, and the area it covered was gradually shrinking. At the same time, the entire inner area trembled as if an earth dragon had flipped over. Countless huge cracks suddenly appeared. The people in the inner area didn't even have time to scream or call for help before they fell into a bottomless abyss. As for the people near the light barrier, they were directly sucked into the terrifying spatial fragments and turned into dust. The only area that wasn't affected was the small mountain. At this moment, the people who were already on the mountain had a look of horror on their faces. All of their faces were pale, and some of their legs were even trembling. In the midst of the collapse of heaven and earth, they were as weak as ants. Chapter 104. Everyone on the mountain was terrified, but at the same time, they were glad that they had made the right choice. They didn't lust after that little bit of cultivation resources, and because of this, they were able to preserve their precious lives. This time, the heavens collapse didn't last as long as the previous time. When everything returned to normal, only this small mountain was left on the Bloodfog Island. Perhaps the Bloodfog Island couldn't be called an island anymore. However, because the area had been greatly reduced, the fog on this small mountain had also become thicker. At a glance, one could only see about 300 to 400 feet away, and there were many trees blocking their vision. The fog had become thicker, and at the same time, the spiritual chi had become denser. The spiritual chi on the small mountain was now 3 times denser than before. As the spiritual chi became denser, their cultivation speed naturally increased, and a few people even broke through to the pure spirit realm on the spot. At this time, some people also thought about why the Yushu clan and Blood Moon had reacted in advance and moved to the mountain. There was only one reason, and that was that they had already known that the heavens collapse would happen again. However, if it were them, they definitely wouldn't do things so openly. Wasn't this the same as telling others that there would be a change in the inner region? The higher-ups of the various factions couldn't understand even if they racked their brains. At this time in the Yushu clan's camp, the atmosphere was very lively. In fact, the Yushu clan didn't know that the heavens collapse would happen again, and everyone was just following orders. Although they all had doubts in their hearts, they all obediently kept their mouths shut and did what they were supposed to do. Not long ago, when the heavens collapse happened again, they finally understood that it was their clan master and deputy clan master who had saved them all. At this moment, whether it was the old people of the Yushu clan, or the people who had surrendered from various factions, they all had endless respect for Yushu and Lung Shichi. They also had a strong sense of belonging and security to the Yushu clan. In the largest tent of the Yushu clan, Yushu sat at the front, Lung Shichi sat beside him, and 14 people stood in front of him. These 14 people were all spirit cultivators of the pure spirit realm. Yushu, on the other hand, was in high spirits. His spittle was flying everywhere as he said something along the lines of, "Follow me and you'll get to eat meat." Everyone else was looking at him with excitement. Lung Shichi was the only one who had his arms crossed, and was about to fall asleep. After a long while, Yushu's voice was almost hoarse from all the talking before the crowd dispersed. "Brother Dark Crow, what do you think of what I said? Do you feel like your whole body is filled with hot blood?" Yushu came over and asked excitedly. Lung Shichi nodded politely. Seeing that Leng Shiqi didn't seem to be in high spirits, Yushu restrained his expression and asked seriously, "What do we do next?" "Wait." Leng Shiqi only said one word. "Wait. Do you think there will be any danger?" Yushu's expression froze. "That's right, I have a feeling that something will happen. Let everyone be alert and don't let their guard down. Don't worry, I will give the order. Also I roar." However, before Yushu could finish his sentence, an earth-shattering roar suddenly came from an unknown place. Immediately after, dozens of roars rose and fell, forming waves of sound in the small mountain. Some people with low cultivation even held their ears in pain. Leng Shiqi and Yushu's expressions changed, and they quickly rushed out of the tent. At this time, the people outside were all nervous. When they saw Leng Shiqi and Yushu come out, their expressions became better as if they had found their backbone. Yushu said in a deep voice, "It's demon beasts. So many demon beasts." Leng Shiqi's eyes focused, and he channeled his spirit power into his eyes to look in a direction halfway up the mountain. However, the mist was too thick and he couldn't see anything clearly. That direction was where the first roar came from. He had only felt that kind of strong wave from the spiritual ruin beast king before. That meant that a rank 2 demon beast had appeared. Leng Shiqi thought to himself, which direction will it go first? Now there were only 5 factions on Blood Mist Island. They were the Yushu clan, Blood Moon, Seiji, the 2 alliances, the Qingyan League, and the Triad. These 5 factions were scattered in 5 directions at the foot of the mountain. With the strength of these 5 factions, dealing with a few rank 1 demon beasts was still within the acceptable range. However, if they were attacked by a rank 2 demon beast, then they could only run away. That rank 2 demon beast was the biggest threat. The roars of the demon beasts gradually dissipated. Everyone waited vigilantly for a long time, but they didn't see any demon beasts coming over. Their hearts were beating like drums, and they were at a loss. Yushu asked doubtfully, "Why isn't there any movement?" "I don't know, but at least it's a good thing for us. Spread out all the pure spirit realm cultivators to patrol the surroundings. Everyone else hurry up and cultivate. Throw in all the resources and strive to have a few more people break through to the pure spirit realm in the shortest time possible. I'm going out." After Leng Shiqi finished speaking, he directly disappeared into the thick fog. Yushu was stunned for a moment, then he followed Leng Shiqi's instructions. Leng Shiqi, on the other hand, carefully walked to the mountainside alone. No one knew when these demonic beasts would suddenly attack. It was like a sharp sword hanging over their heads, making them feel uneasy at all times. Leng Shiqi didn't like this feeling. He was skilled and bold enough to explore the demon beasts first. However, because the fog was too big and there were tall trees everywhere, Leng Shiqi's speed was not fast. After walking for a while, he felt that something was wrong. As he walked, he couldn't help but stop and then turn around. His right hand was already holding the hilt of his sword, but there was nothing behind him. That's not right. Leng Shiqi frowned. He remembered that when he walked over, he passed by an unknown forked plant, but now that he turned around, there were 2 straight towering trees behind him. Leng Shiqi narrowed his eyes, and a hint of seriousness appeared in his eyes. Immediately he stomped hard, creating a small pit under his feet, and then walked to the 2 towering trees. Leng Shiqi pulled out his spirit sword and flicked his wrist. The tip of the sword drew a mark on the trunk. Then he did not continue to go up. Instead, he walked down dozens of steps and then returned the way he came. When he came back and saw that the mark on the trunk was still there, he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He thought that there was still something like a maze in the fog. He secretly thought that he was overthinking it. However, when he continued to take a few steps forward, he was suddenly stunned. The small pit that he stepped on was gone. Chapter 105. Leng Shiqi noticed that the small hole had disappeared and his heart sank. He knew that he was no longer in the same place. Looks like the fog has not only blocked our vision, it has also messed up our sense of direction, Leng Shiqi thought to himself. However, Leng Shiqi did not panic. He raised his left hand and a faint light appeared in his palm. Then he pushed his left hand and a strong wind blew out of his palm. It was the 2nd rank spiritual skill, Spirit Attack. Spirit attack was a spiritual skill that did not have much power before it was fused with the attribute, but now it had a miraculous effect. The strong wind blew away the fog in a large area. Lung Shiqi hurriedly channeled his spiritual energy into his eyes and quickly observed the surrounding terrain. There, Lung Shiqi saw the small hole he had stepped on before, and his eyes lit up. He roughly looked and saw that the small hole was not far away from him. It was just that the direction was a little off. It was not terrible to deviate a little. What was terrible was that if you deviated a little every time you walked, then you did not know where you would end up. Lung Shiqi hesitated for a while. It was still very troublesome to find the way back. In the end, he decided to continue forward. But from then on, Lung Shiqi would leave a small hole on the ground every few steps. Moreover, as long as he encountered a plant, he would mark it with a different number. In addition, every once in a while, he would use spirit attack to ensure that his direction was correct. In this way, Lung Shiqi walked for about a quarter of an hour. Suddenly, his feet moved and his body flashed. Almost at the same time, a ferocious mouth bit down on the spot where Lung Shiqi had been standing. Lung Shiqi turned his head and saw a brown python with its mouth wide open and fangs sticking out its tongue at him. That was close. Lung Shiqi was secretly sweating in his heart, because his perception was a little chaotic in this thick fog. He was almost ambushed by a demon beast before he realized it. Fortunately, it was him. If it was an ordinary spirit cultivator of the pure spirit realm, he would have already been ambushed by the giant python. Lung Shiqi snorted coldly. He held the spirit sword in his hand and tapped it a few times. Several invisible sword chi suddenly shot out. Although the giant python could not see the sword chi, it instinctively sensed danger. Its huge body agilely rolled and dodged the two sword chis. Even so, 3 to 4 sword chis still managed to cut through the giant python's body. Hiss hiss. The huge python hissed a few times in pain. Its wild nature flared up, and it twisted its body to bite over. Lung Shiqi's expression did not change. He clenched his fist, and the spirit sword in his hand disappeared and turned into a long spear. This was a second-grade spirit spear that the Yushu clan had plundered. Lung Shiqi pointed his spear, and a strong fighting spirit suddenly erupted from his body. His aura became extremely domineering. He raised his spear, and the tip of the spear glowed with spiritual light as he charged forward. It was the second-grade spirit technique, formation-breaking tyrant spear. The spear and the python collided in the blink of an eye. However, at this moment, Lung Shiqi's body suddenly sank a little, and he narrowly dodged the python's attack from below. At the same time, the spear stabbed upwards. Poochie! The spear stabbed out and directly pierced through the giant python. Lung Shiqi patted the bottom of the spear, and the spear immediately pierced through the giant python and flew into the air. In the blink of an eye, Lung Shiqi's figure suddenly disappeared, and then strangely appeared in the air. He turned around and held onto the spear. With a walla sound, Lung Shiqi held the spear and drew a huge cross light before smashing it down again. The tip of the spear pierced the giant python again with a cross light, nailing the giant python to the ground. Lung Shiqi gently landed and stood on the tip of the spear. His ink-flowing robe fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were full of cold killing intent. The giant python kept twisting its huge body, but it couldn't break free. It could only twist its body and swing its tail. Lung Shiqi didn't even turn his head. He held the sword in his right hand, and when the snake tail was about to hit him, he instantly cut the snake tail in half. A pillar of scarlet spurted out. Lung Shiqi withdrew his sword and formed a seal, and the pillar of blood was gathered together. Not long after, the giant python's body shriveled up, and there was no more sound. After collecting the demon blood and selling the giant python's body to the system, Lung Shiqi looked around and muttered, "It seems that this place is near the mountainside." Then Lung Shiqi withdrew his spear, made a mark, and continued to walk forward. Unexpectedly, not long after he walked, he encountered another demon beast. When the demon beast saw someone, it immediately rushed over with bloodshot eyes. But this time, Lung Shiqi didn't fight. Instead, he followed the marks he made and ran back. The demon beast chased closely behind him. Every time it was about to catch up to Lung Shiqi, he would use the confusion footwork to open up the distance. Lung Shiqi silently calculated the distance as he ran. Not long after, the demon beast suddenly stopped chasing. It stood in place and roared crazily. Seeing this, Lung Shiqi's heart skipped a beat as if he had thought of something. Then he walked towards the demonic beast step by step. When Lung Shiqi took 8 steps, the demon beast bared its fangs and pounced at him again. He lightly tapped his foot and floated back 3 meters. That demonic beast stopped again. Interesting. Could it be that there's some invisible restriction here? Lung Shiqi could tell that the demonic beast seemed to have a limited range of movement. He guessed that the range should be that it couldn't leave the mountainside. With this information, Lung Shiqi's heart calmed down a bit. He immediately went back the way he came. In the end, it took some twists and turns before he finally returned to the camp. When Lung Shiqi returned to the camp, Yushu immediately greeted him and asked, "Brother Dark Crow, are you okay?" Yushu didn't immediately ask about the demon beast. Instead, he was concerned about Lung Shiqi's safety. This surprised Lung Shiqi a bit. He first shook his head and said, "I'm fine. Let's talk inside." The two walked into the tent. Lung Shiqi directly said, "The fog in the Blood Mist Island is a bit strange. If you go out rashly, you might get lost. In the future, when you send people out to collect food and water, be careful. It's best to make a mark. Also, don't worry too much about the demon beast. They shouldn't come down in a short period of time. During this time, everyone must cultivate and improve their strength as much as possible before the demon beast attacks." Yushu nodded to show that he understood. Then he went out to make arrangements. Lung Shiqi returned to his tent and calmed down to carefully refine his spirit power. He used external objects to break through to the 7th level of the pure spirit realm. His foundation was a bit unstable. Now he had to slowly purify his spirit power. After everything settled down, the entire Yushu clan set off a cultivation frenzy. Other than those who were patrolling and collecting resources, everyone else was working hard to cultivate. These peaceful days lasted for 9 days. After 9 days, the entire Blood Mist Island was shrouded in the sound of the demon beast. Everyone knew that the demon beast had come. Chapter 106. Roar, roar, roar. The roars of the demonic beasts were endless. Everyone from the Yushu clan stood there in an orderly manner, with nearly 30 people standing at the front. These people were all spirit cultivators of the pure spirit realm. In the 9 heavens, Yushu could be considered to have hardened his heart, throwing down all of his cultivation resources, and even passing down a rank 2 cultivation method. All spirit cultivators of the 9th level of the spirit gathering realm could cultivate at will. In addition, the spirit energy of the Blood Mist Island was more than 3 times denser than before. In just 9 days, more than 10 people had broken through to the pure spirit realm. Hua Lingling, Blood is no different, Mu 21, and the others had all reached the 4th level of the pure spirit realm, and could take charge of things on their own. Yushu was still standing at the front, holding 2 daggers of different shapes in his hands, his expression solemn. Only Lung Shiqi leaned against a log with his arms crossed. Because he was wearing a mask, his expression could not be seen. But from his fingers that were involuntarily tapping, it could be seen that his heart was not calm. Of course, what Lung Shiqi cared about was not the rank 1 demonic beasts, but the rank 2 demonic beasts. Which side would the rank 2 demonic beasts attack first? No one knew. Time passed bit by bit, and the roars of the demonic beasts slowly approached. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. Finally, a demonic beast appeared in everyone's sight. Then, the 2nd, the 3rd, until the 13th demonic beast appeared. A total of 13 demonic beasts. The spirit cultivators of the pure spirit realm, including Yushu, all turned pale and secretly swallowed their saliva. The spirit cultivators of the spirit gathering realm behind them turned pale with fright, and some of them even trembled and could not control their legs. Yushu glanced at Lung Shiqi with a questioning look in his eyes. Lung Shiqi nodded silently. Yushu took a deep breath and shouted with all his strength. "Everyone, divide into 10 groups. Each group will fight against 1 demonic beast. I and the vice leader will deal with the rest. Remember, only by fighting with all your strength will you have a chance of survival. If anyone escapes, kill them on the spot. Fight! Fight! Everyone shouted this word at the top of their lungs, and immediately took the initiative to charge out. The Yushu clan's campsite was only built with trees. It was completely useless against a first-stage demonic beast. It was better to charge out directly. When everyone rushed out of the campsite, they tacitly divided into 10 groups, each of them facing a demonic beast. Yushu rushed towards the demonic beast alone. As for Lung Shiqi, he unsheathed his saber and slashed out nearly 100 saber shadows that enveloped the 2 demonic beasts. The battle had begun. Rank 1 beasts were no longer a threat to the Lung Shiqi, even if there were 2 of them. However, Lung Shiqi was not in a hurry to kill the 2 beasts. He only used a few low-level sword techniques to entangle the beasts while observing the others' battles. Yushu was fighting alone with a giant white-furred wolf. At present, Yushu still had the upper hand. Among the others, only Hualingling and the other 2 were barely holding on. As for the rest, they were completely unable to fight against the first-stage demonic beasts. Every now and then, someone would die tragically under the claws of the demonic beasts. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen people had fallen to the ground dead. Lung Shiqi knew that he could not delay any longer. His saber suddenly became fierce. His body was like a phantom, and with the shadow of his saber he cut open wounds on the demonic beasts' bodies. The 2 demonic beasts suddenly roared, and immediately their bodies bloomed with a dazzling bloody light. Seeing this familiar scene, Lung Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. He knew that they were about to mutate. Lung Shiqi appeared beside the demonic beasts in a flash, and in the next moment, he slashed out 2 saber shadows. Pu-pu! The 2 demonic beasts fell to the ground. The demonic beasts shrouded in bloody light had just begun to mutate when they were both beheaded by Lung Shiqi. Unfortunately, he could not refine the demonic blood in front of everyone, nor could he deal with the demonic beasts' corpses. He felt a little lost. Next, Lung Shiqi looked left and right, then rushed to Yushu's side. However, when he was halfway there, he found that the demonic beast that Yushu was fighting was also emitting bloody light. Yushu naturally knew what this meant. With a fierce look on his face, he clenched his sabers and rushed directly in front of the demonic beast. Then he squatted and immediately jumped up. At the same time, his body spun rapidly. The 2 sabers in his hands burst out with saber shadows. From afar, it looked like a small tornado formed by saber shadows. Countless saber shadows fell on the demonic beast's body. In the blink of an eye, its flesh was torn open, as if it was dying of 1,000 cuts. Lung Shiqi, who was halfway there, suddenly stopped in his tracks. Unknowingly, Yushu's strength had become so strong. At this time, Yushu turned his head slightly tiredly and smiled at Lung Shiqi, then immediately rushed to another demonic beast. Lung Shiqi nodded slightly, and was about to deal with the other demonic beasts. Suddenly, all the demonic beasts paused in unison, then roared towards the sky. The people of the Yushu clan were also stunned, but they did not take the opportunity to attack the demonic beasts. Instead, they all turned their heads to look in one direction, because there was a strange demonic beast slowly walking over. This demonic beast looked like a giant crocodile, but its body was upright. The scales on its body were dark silver, and there seemed to be a faint flicker of fire on the scales. The most terrifying thing was that this demonic beast's aura was much stronger than those rank 1 demonic beasts. From afar, one could feel an invisible pressure pressing down on one's body. This was a rank 2 demonic beast. Silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. The moment the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile appeared, everyone from the Yushu clan felt their hearts sink, and a chill ran down their spines. A sense of despair rose from the bottom of their hearts. Just these rank 1 demonic beasts were already difficult for them to deal with, let alone a rank 2 demonic beast. It could even be said that those spirit cultivators in the spirit assembly realm did not even have the qualifications to face a rank 2 demonic beast. Lung Shiqi's eyes could not help but twitch a few times. At this moment, he still clearly remembered that Yushu had said that rank 2 demonic beasts would definitely not come here. He turned his head to look at Yushu, and found that Yushu's face was already as black as iron. He really did not expect to be targeted by a rank 2 demonic beast. One must know that there were still 5 factions on the Blood Mist Island, and everyone had a 20% chance. However, the Yushu clan just happened to bump into them. However, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile did not care about what they thought. When it saw so many people, it immediately opened its bloody mouth and pounced towards the nearest person. That person was a newly advanced spirit cultivator in the pure spirit stage. Facing such a terrifying silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, he subconsciously wanted to escape, but his legs did not listen to him at this time. Seeing this scene, Yushu immediately rushed over. Lung Shiqi also moved his feet and quickly rushed over. However, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was not slow either. In the blink of an eye, it rushed in front of that person and bit down. That person only had time to block in front of him with his weapon, but it was a pity that the weapon broke in half in an instant. A spirit cultivator in the pure spirit stage could not even block one attack from the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, and was torn apart. Chapter 107. In the blink of an eye, the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator had killed a spirit cultivator of the pure spirit realm, casting a shadow over everyone's heart. There were even some who had the thought of escaping, but the other rank 1 demonic beasts had started to bite them crazily, not giving them the chance to escape. At this time, Yushu had already rushed over. He was not afraid as he raised his dual blades and suddenly slashed out 2 shocking blade auras. These blade auras were only slightly weaker than Lung Shiqi's. However, what no one expected was that when these 2 blade auras slashed onto the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator's back, they only created 2 rows of dazzling sparks. When the sparks dissipated, the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator was safe and sound. There were only 2 shallow scratches on its back. Yushu, bang! The silver-scaled fire-armored alligator swung its tail, and Yushu immediately spat out blood and flew out, crashing into a thick tree trunk. How can I fight this?" Yushu said weakly. All of this naturally fell into Lung Shiqi's eyes. He was also secretly amazed at the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator's strong defense. However, he still continued to rush over, because at this time, only he could deal with the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator. Lung Shiqi stepped on the black fog, and his body moved continuously. After dodging 2 attacks from the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator, he found an opportunity and waved his battle blade, causing a magnificent crescent blade aura to surge out. The blade aura was so bright that it even dispersed the surrounding fog. The blade aura ruthlessly slashed onto the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator's legs. Yushu stared at the blade aura with a trace of envy and hope in his eyes. He was envious because he could not slash out such a blade aura. He hoped that Lung Shiqi could deal with the rank 2 demonic beast. The saber light slashed down and made a strange sound. When the saber light dissipated, it was clear that Lung Shiqi's saber had left a deep cut on the silver-scale fire-armored alligator's legs. Lung Shiqi could not help but frown when he saw this. The defensive power of this silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was far beyond his imagination. It was even stronger than the spiritual ruin beast king. Lung Shiqi's waning moon rapid light slash was able to cut off the 4 claws of the mutated demon beast. Now that Lung Shiqi's cultivation had improved greatly, it could only slightly injure the silver-scale fire-armored crocodile. One could imagine how strong the silver-scale fire-armored crocodile's defense was. Lung Shiqi hurriedly retreated after slashing with his saber. The moment he retreated, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's thick arm slashed down, leaving a deep and long claw mark on the ground. Lung Shiqi's clothes fluttered in the wind created by the demonic beasts. At this moment, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was glaring at Lung Shiqi with its blood-red eyes. It wanted to tear him into pieces. Lung Shiqi secretly smiled when he saw this. Then he lightly tapped his foot and floated back. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile roared and leaped forward. However, Lung Shiqi dodged again and again. He turned his hand and slashed with another wind slash. Unfortunately, this perfect wind slash could not break through the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's defense. It only left a deeper mark than Yushu's. However, this was enough to enrage the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, causing it to chase after Lung Shiqi. Under his guidance, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile gradually left the camp. Seeing that Leng Shiqi had lured the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile away, everyone secretly sighed in relief. Although rank 1 demonic beasts were very dangerous, at least they still had some confidence. However, facing a rank 2 demonic beast, they were in despair. Yushu continuously stuffed a few pills into his mouth, and led everyone to continue resisting the remaining 10 rank 1 demonic beasts. Leng Shiqi gradually lured the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile away. During this process, Leng Shiqi also discovered that although the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's running speed was not very fast, its explosive speed in a short distance was very shocking. Leng Shiqi had almost been caught twice. Fortunately, he had injured the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's legs with his saber. Otherwise, it would be hard to say if he could lure it out safely. It's about time. After a while, Leng Shiqi looked around and felt that they were far enough away. He immediately stopped. Then he suddenly turned around and a long spear suddenly appeared in his hand. He turned around and stabbed. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile only had Leng Shiqi in its eyes. It did not even look at the long spear, and still opened its bloody mouth to pounce. Ding! The tip of the long spear pierced the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, but there was a sound of metal clashing. The entire long spear even bent, as if it would break in a few breaths' time. This spear did not cause any damage to the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, but it did block the crocodile. Leng Shiqi clenched his left hand into a fist. Suddenly, there was a faint sound of a tiger's roar. A terrifying force condensed on his fist. He suddenly punched out. The fist was like a fierce tiger treading on waves as it smashed into the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's chest. The fierce tiger treading on waves fist contained both internal and external forces. The external force caused the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body to shrink a little. The internal force mercilessly rushed into its body and crazily destroyed its flesh. After hitting the target, Leng Shiqi did not dare to be greedy and immediately dodged. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile roared in pain. The silver scales all over its body lifted up, forming a barb-like existence. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi knew that it was not good. He felt that it was a little troublesome. Originally, he wanted to imitate the battle with the spiritual ruin beast king, and use the fierce tiger treading on waves fist to break its defense. Then, he would use the overflowing meridian sword chi to seal its meridians and slowly wear it down to death. But he did not expect that this demonic beast would have such a method. This disrupted his plan. Thus, the killing intent in Leng Shiqi's heart subsided a little. If he could not use the fierce tiger treading on waves fist, then the chances of killing this beast would be much smaller. Unless he used the beast chi battle runes to face it head-on, but the price would be too great. Furthermore, he might not be able to kill the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. Leng Shiqi hesitated for a moment, but still decided not to take the risk. He only needed to stall the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. The Yushu clan had more than 100 people. Among them, there were close to 30 pure spirit realm cultivators. In addition, they also had a few trump cards to deal with the remaining 10 demonic beasts. However, deaths and injuries were inevitable. After that, Leng Shiqi immediately changed his strategy. He no longer faced the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile head-on. He maintained the ghost parade and wandered around. Whenever the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile approached, he would use the confusion footwork to increase the distance between them. From then on, a chase began. Leng Shiqi's cultivation was at the 7th level of the pure spirit realm. He had a lot of spirit energy. Furthermore, he had some pills to recover spirit energy. He did not need to worry about the consumption of spirit energy for a short period of time. However, there was a problem. At the beginning, Leng Shiqi could still barely remember the surrounding environment and direction. However, as the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile approached again and again, Leng Shiqi had to be completely focused. He did not dare to be distracted and gradually lost his sense of direction. One man and one beast quickly shuttled through the dense forest. After about 15 minutes, Leng Shiqi only had half of his spirit energy left. He estimated that the distance was far enough. Just as he was about to use the Hand of Earth to get rid of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, he suddenly heard the sound of intense fighting not far away. Lung Shiqi's heart moved and he immediately rushed in that direction. Chapter 108. Currently, there were only 5 forces left on the Blood Mist Island, and the Triad was one of them. This alliance was made up of 3 forces. Before the arrival of the second heavenly collapse, the strongest forces of the Yushu clan all went up the mountain, which made them a little anxious. They also guessed that there was something fishy, but their respective forces were not enough to fight against the monsters on the mountain. In the end, they decided to join forces and form an alliance to fight against the monsters. Facts proved that their decision was very wise. Today, they were also besieged by more than 10 monsters. Fortunately, they had a lot of people. Although they suffered heavy casualties, they had already killed more than half of the monsters. Seeing that victory was in front of them, their morale was greatly boosted, and they all gave it their all. However, at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Only a few people noticed it, but they all thought that their eyes were playing tricks on them, so they did not pay too much attention. But what everyone didn't expect was that a demonic beast followed closely behind, and it was a rank 2 demonic beast. This was naturally the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile that was chasing after Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi originally planned to escape directly, but he accidentally came to the Triad, so he thought of a way to lure the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile over. After he came here, he immediately drilled into the ground and sank deep, afraid that the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile would find his aura. When the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile rushed over, it suddenly lost Lung Shiqi's figure, and became even more furious. It immediately roared towards the sky. Its roar that contained anger immediately attracted everyone's attention. At this moment, whether it was the cultivators of the Triad or the rank 1 monsters, they were all intimidated by the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's roar. The blood in the eyes of the rank 1 monsters became denser, and the cultivators of the Triad were all ashen, not knowing what to do. Originally, these rank 1 monsters had already caused them to suffer heavy casualties, but now, a rank 2 monster suddenly appeared. Especially the Alliance Master of Triad, Extreme Evil. When he felt the terrifying aura of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, even with his cultivation at the 6th level of the pure spirit realm, he broke out in cold sweat, let alone the others. To the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, since it couldn't find the person who injured it, as long as it was a human, it would tear them apart. The silver-scaled fire-armored alligator arched its body and shot out like a sharp arrow. It was like a tiger entering a flock of sheep. In the blink of an eye, it tore several people into pieces. Instantly, blood splattered everywhere. Seeing this scene, who would still dare to fight it? The sudden appearance of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile broke the psychological defense of the crowd. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 people fled. Extreme Evil immediately raged. Idiots, a bunch of idiots. The faster you run, the faster you die. As soon as these people fled, the Tier 1 demonic beasts that were originally suppressed went berserk in the blink of an eye. It was hard to suppress them anymore. The entire battle seemed to be in a state of complete defeat. Extreme Evil watched as his subordinates died one after another, especially those who fled. How could they outrun the demonic beasts? Instead, they died even faster. However, Extreme Evil still didn't give up. He shouted, "Don't hold back anymore. Use all your trump cards. Who knows, you might still have a chance." After saying that, Extreme Evil slid out an icy blue needle from his sleeve and shot it out. The speed of the ice needle was extremely fast. It just happened to catch the moment the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile stopped and shot it. The moment the ice needle reached the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, it didn't pierce into it. Instead, it strangely turned into a shocking cold air and swallowed it. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body was suddenly covered with a layer of ice. Furthermore, the ice was getting thicker and thicker, sealing it in ice. At the same time, the 2 people beside Extreme Evil also took out 2 items with a pained expression. One was a light crossbow. On the light crossbow were 2 crossbow bolts, one black and one white. When the crossbow bolts were shot, they actually intertwined with each other in midair, and turned into a black and white light beam. The other person took out an oval-shaped container. He threw the container into midair. Numerous colorful little insects scattered out from the container and crawled towards the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was currently sealed in ice. However, a layer of faint silver flame suddenly emerged from its body. The ice on the surface of its body began to melt rapidly. It seemed to have sensed a threat and tried its best to move its body a little. Pff. In the end, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile moved a little. That black and white crossbow bolt pierced into the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's lower abdomen. Immediately after, the two opposing forces suddenly exploded. In the blink of an eye, a large area of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's scales exploded, revealing the flesh underneath. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile wanted to howl in pain, but the layer of ice on its head still sealed it in ice. It could only barely open its mouth, but no sound came out. Right after the explosion, hundreds of little insects crawled onto its body. Many of them directly drilled into its body through the wound on its lower abdomen and mercilessly tore apart its flesh. Roar! Bang! The silver flame on the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body suddenly surged and instantly melted all the ice crystals. The silver flame was still incessantly burning those little insects on its body. The corpses of the insects fell down in batches. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's pair of blood-red eyes stared at extreme evil, and the other two. Its eyes flickered with a crazy killing intent. At this moment, extreme evil and the other two's hearts were already dead. They had joined hands and used their strongest trump card, but they still couldn't do anything to the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. They knew that this was not something they could deal with. Sigh, run. Run as many as you can. Extreme evil sighed deeply. It was as if he had used up all his strength to finish this sentence. Even he, the alliance leader, had spoken. This time no one dared to stay. The dozens of people immediately scattered like birds and beasts. The rest was a massacre by the demonic beasts. After a moment, this place had become a scene of carnage. Fresh blood dyed the ground red. Broken limbs were everywhere. The remaining few demonic beasts, including the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, were excitedly eating. At this moment, the scales on the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body had returned to its original state. Moreover, it looked a little weak. Just as it was replenishing its strength, the ground under its feet suddenly softened. Immediately, a huge fist with an incomparably turbulent force drilled out from the ground and hit the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's lower abdomen. Bang! A loud sound rang out. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was directly blasted into the air by this punch. Traces of fishy blood flowed out from its mouth. At the place where the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was standing just now, there was an additional figure. This person's appearance was clearly that of a 12 or 13-year-old youth. However, he was as tall as an adult. Moreover, his entire body was bulging with bulging muscles. A tyrannical aura was emitted from his body. A faint trace of blood-red light appeared in his eyes. This person was naturally Lung Shiqi, who had activated the Beast Origin battle pattern. In the next moment, Lung Shiqi instantly disappeared. When they looked again, he had already appeared behind the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. Another punch landed. Chapter 109. Thanks to my book friends Not by Xiaojun for their recommendation and Cute Gugugu and Pomegranate Mama for their support. Lung Shiqi, who had activated the Beast Origin battle pattern, attacked with another tiger wave-stomping fist on its back. With a boom, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was smashed into the ground by a huge force, creating a large crater. The scales on its back were also cracked. Lung Shiqi was still in the air. He held the sword in his right hand and the spear in his left hand. With a shake of the spear, he drew a huge cross in the air and fiercely stabbed down. At the same time, he pointed his spirit sword and a faint blue pattern flashed on the blade. Then Lung Shiqi turned into several afterimages and stabbed down. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was hit by the tiger wave-stomping fist twice in a row. Although the external force didn't cause much damage to it, The internal force that rushed into its body was constantly destroying its bones and meridians, making it unable to get up for a while. At this moment, the heavy cross spear accurately stabbed into the back of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, completely tearing apart its defense. Almost at the same time, several invisible sword chi surged out and entered its body from the wound, instantly sealing all the spirit power in its abdomen. After the sword chi, there were several sharp sword rays. With a piu-piu sound, the wound on the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's abdomen was already open and blood was flowing out. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile roared in extreme pain, and a layer of silver flames appeared all over its body. Lung Shiqi already knew it would be like this. After using chaotic blossom lust, he continuously retreated. Immediately, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile crazily rushed over. Even the other rank 1 monsters rushed over and completely surrounded Lung Shiqi. But Lung Shiqi didn't panic and immediately changed his sword for a saber. As several monstrous beasts pounced on him, he softly spat out 2 words, "Ice spread." In an instant, a thick chill rose from Lung Shiqi's feet. In the blink of an eye, it condensed into a layer of ice and quickly spread out. Those rank 1 demonic beasts were instantly frozen after coming into contact with the ice. However, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body emitted silver flames. When the ice surged up and came into contact with the flames, it melted. Sizzling sounds were unceasingly heard, and a thick fog was emitted. Lung Shiqi knew that this bit of ice wouldn't be able to seal the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, but he didn't plan on sealing it. He just wanted the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile to keep burning with silver flames. This was because he had discovered that the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator's spirit force and physical strength were rapidly being consumed when the silver flames burned. Most importantly, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's defense was at its weakest at this moment. With the help of the thick water vapor, Lung Shiqi displayed the ghost parade and confusion footwork to the extreme. In a few flashes, he appeared behind the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. Immediately, a magnificent crescent saber aura suddenly appeared, dispersing all the water vapor. At the same time, it completely engulfed the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. And Lung Shiqi still attacked the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's wound. After 2 breaths, the saber aura dissipated. Lung Shiqi's saber was deeply embedded in the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body, almost cutting it in half. However, Lung Shiqi was still not at ease. He withdrew his saber and punched the tiger-treading wave fist on the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's back. He also used the rebound force to retreat. After retreating, Lung Shiqi quickly formed seals and pulled his arms. A large amount of blood flew out from the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's wound and gathered in the air. After a dozen breaths, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile finally staggered and fell to the ground, no longer breathing. Seeing this scene, Lung Shiqi secretly sighed in relief. He also stopped the seals in his hand and changed to another kind of seal. Then his body slowly returned to its original state, followed by a strong sense of fatigue and soreness that swept through his body. Lung Shiqi's face instantly turned pale. He staggered and almost lost his balance. He hurriedly took out a few pills and swallowed them. Only then did he feel a little better. But at this time, the ice crystals on the other rank 1 monsters began to crack, and more cracks appeared. It looked like they were about to break out of the ice. Lung Shiqi snorted softly and immediately flashed out with the spirit sword in his hand. Then there was an endless crack sound. This was not the sound of the monsters breaking out of the ice, but the sound of Lung Shiqi killing the monsters with the ice crystals. In less than 5 minutes, all the rank 1 monsters were dead. Lung Shiqi's forehead was covered in a layer of cold sweat. Then he arrived next to the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body and stabbed it into its head. A light silver monster core was taken out, and Lung Shiqi's face immediately lit up. In today's battle, he had deeply experienced the terror of the beast origin battle pattern. Not only did it provide Lung Shiqi with a huge amount of power, but it also gave him a powerful burst of power. Without the beast origin battle pattern, it would have been impossible for him to kill the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. According to the demonic beast origin method, once he reached the spirit transformation realm, he would be able to refine the beast origin battle pattern again. Lung Shiqi was looking forward to it because the monster core of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was likely to be refined into a beast origin battle pattern that could increase his defense. However, now was not the time for him to look forward to the future. After he looked around and saw that there was no one around, he sank into the ground and began to recover his spirit energy. After he recovered his spirit energy, he collected the blood of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile and the other monsters, and sold the corpses to the system. Finally, he fumbled his way back to the Yushu clan's camp. When Lung Shiqi returned, what he saw was also a hellish scene. At this time, the Yushu clan's camp was already in a mess. Blood had already dyed the ground red, and there were corpses everywhere. There were both spirit cultivators and monsters. Moreover, there was an aura of death everywhere. Even those who had survived were all lifeless. Lung Shiqi scanned the corpses of the monsters and counted a total of 13. Seeing that the monsters were completely annihilated, he felt relieved. However, the Yushu clan's situation was not good. Originally, there were more than 100 people in the clan, but now there were only 40 to 50 people left. In this battle, more than half of the people were sacrificed. Almost all of the remaining people were injured, and there were even a few who were on the verge of death. It was unknown if they could be saved. Seeing that Lung Shiqi had returned, everyone looked at him gratefully. If he had not lured the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile away, they did not know how many of them would have survived. At this time, Yushu, who was covered in injuries, was still trying his best to comfort everyone and instruct them to deal with the corpses. Seeing that Lung Shiqi had returned, he felt relieved and nodded at him. Lung Shiqi did not say anything and directly went forward to help everyone deal with the battlefield. This time they finally made it through. Chapter 110. In the blink of an eye, it had been 3 months since the last siege of the demonic beasts. Although there were some waves and tribulations in these 3 months, everyone's strength was rapidly increasing, and they managed to survive. Of course, casualties were still inevitable. Currently, the Blood Fog Island only had the Yushu clan, the Blood Moon, the Seiji, and the Qingyan League. The total number of people in these 4 forces was only a little more than 100. From more than 10,000 people to more than 100 people now, only a year and a half had passed. The Yushu clan had the most people among the 4 forces. After the battle 3 months ago, although the Yushu clan only had a little more than 40 people left, they had also accepted some people from the triad. After another 3 months of losses, there were still more than 40 people left. At this time, the Yushu clan's camp was no longer at the foot of the mountain, but halfway up the mountain. This was because the blood firmament had been slowly shrinking all this time. The area below the foot of the mountain had long disappeared. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before they had nowhere to go. From the halfway up the mountain, there was only the mysterious blood tower left. People from various forces had gone to check it, and found out that the blood tower was actually very huge. Although it only had 5 floors, it was at least 200 to 300 feet high. Moreover, there was a door on all 4 sides of the blood fog tower, but the shape of each door was not the same. No one knew the purpose of each door. It was a pity that the blood tower was surrounded by a huge blood light screen, so they couldn't investigate it at close range. However, everyone also discovered that this blood light screen was gradually fading. They believed that it wouldn't be long before it dissipated. This also meant that when the blood firmament at the outermost layer became smaller and smaller, they would have to enter the blood tower. Perhaps this blood red tower was their final test. At this time, in the Yushu clan's temporary camp, other than a few people patrolling, everyone else was diligently cultivating. Moreover, as far as the eye could see, everyone's cultivation was at the pure spirit realm. Now the spirit chi on Bloodmist Island was so rich that it could be touched with one's hand. As long as one's aptitude was passable, all of them had broken through to the pure spirit realm. In fact, most of them were at the middle stage of the pure spirit realm. As for Hua Lingling Mu 21, and Blood is no different, the oldest batch of pure spirit realm spirit cultivators, they were all at the late stage of the pure spirit realm. As for Lung Shiqi and Yushu, Their cultivations were shockingly already at the peak of the 9th level of the pure spirit realm. However, the two of them didn't feel that their cultivation speed was fast at all. Because just a few days ago, they had received news that Delta Origi had broken through to the spirit transformation realm. The news of the Delta Origi breaking through to the spirit transformation realm spread like wildfire. It was as if there was a mountain pressing down on everyone's hearts. Especially for those who were at the late stage of the pure spirit realm. It was a huge blow. They knew best that the more they cultivated, the more difficult it was to advance. Just the bottleneck of the 8th and 9th level of the pure spirit realm was enough to block them. When they thought that someone had actually broken through to the spirit transformation realm, they felt that their hard work in cultivation was all for naught in the end. In the end, everyone could only attribute Delta Origi's breakthrough to her heaven-defying aptitude. This was the so-called comparisons are odious. However, only Lung Shiqi knew that the reason why Delta Origi was able to break through to the spirit transformation realm so quickly was not only because of her superb cultivation aptitude, but also because she possessed a rank 4 cultivation method. That rank 4 cultivation method was obtained from the puppet battle in the wetland. This was the answer that Lung Shiqi had exchanged with information later. Delta Origi's breakthrough also brought him a lot of pressure. It has to be said that Lung Shiqi had not slacked off in his cultivation for the past 3 months. Moreover, he had never stopped consuming pills and spirit stones. In addition, he would refine a mass of monster blood every few days. He had broken through from the 8th level of the pure spirit realm to the 9th level, with the help of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's monster blood. Otherwise, it would have taken him more than 10 days to break through. In fact, Lung Shiqi was already at the peak of the pure spirit realm a month ago. However, because he had relied on external help to break through, when he touched the barrier of the spirit transformation realm, he knew that his foundation was a little unstable. If he did not properly purify his spirit force, he was afraid that he would not be able to break through to the spirit transformation realm for a long time. Therefore, in the following month, he had been purifying his spirit force, causing Yushu's cultivation to gradually catch up with him. On this day, Lung Shiqi looked inwardly at the spirit force in his sea of qi. Every strand of spirit force was incomparably pure, and he finally smiled. It took me a whole month to finally purify all my spirit force to the extreme. Fortunately, nothing too dangerous happened this month. Lung Shiqi whispered to himself. Then Lung Shiqi took out a fist-sized crystal ball from the system space. His eyes flashed with excitement and anticipation. This crystal ball was one of the rewards from the spiritual ruins. It was also the best reward that Lung Shiqi felt was the experience ball. If something like the experience ball was used in the game, it could directly give a large amount of experience to level up. If it was used in the real world, it would give a huge amount of spirit force. This was the kind of spirit force that could directly increase one's cultivation. Moreover, it was exceptionally pure, so there was no need to worry about leaving any hidden dangers. Lung Shiqi had not used this thing until now because he wanted to break through to the spirit transformation realm. That's right, Lung Shiqi was preparing to break through to the next realm, the spirit transformation realm. In the cultivation system, the pure spirit realm was a realm that opened up the spirit force in the sea of qi. The spirit transformation realm was the process of turning the spirit force in the sea of qi into mist, and the mist into the sea. In order to break through from the pure spirit realm to the spirit transformation realm, the spirit force in the body must be condensed into mist. Lung Shiqi cultivated 2 rank 3 cultivation methods at the same time, so he knew that there were 2 ways to break through. The method recorded in the demonic beast technique was more violent. It was to directly compress the sea of qi and turn it into mist to break through. Although this was simple, the process was very dangerous. If one was not careful, it would cause the sea of qi to become turbulent. In the most serious case, the sea of qi would collapse, causing one's cultivation to fall back to the spirit gathering realm. The other rank 3 cultivation method, Moonlight Cloud Codex, had a more smooth method. Lung Shiqi thought about it and decided to play it safe and use the method of the Moonlight Cloud Codex to break through. After all, the spirit force in the experience ball in his hand was very large and very pure. There was no need for him to take the risk. Since he had decided, Lung Shiqi immediately adjusted his state and crushed the experience ball. Immediately after, the experience ball instantly turned into a huge ball of spirit qi that gently wrapped Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi suddenly felt countless gentle spirit qi coming from his limbs and bones, making his whole body feel very comfortable. Lung Shiqi smoothly mobilized this spirit qi to break through the bottleneck of the spirit transformation realm again and again. During the process of breaking through this time, Lung Shiqi did not feel a lot of pain. Instead, the process was quite smooth. About an hour later, Lung Shiqi's body vaguely made a sound as if something had broken. Immediately, Lung Shiqi's aura suddenly surged and the ink-flowing clothes on his body began to move. Waves of invisible spiritual pressure spread out, setting off bursts of wind and waves. Lung Shiqi abruptly opened his eyes, and two dazzling lights flashed through them. His cultivation was already at the spirit transformation realm. Chapter 111. Lung Shiqi gently clenched his fist, feeling the majestic power in his body, and finally laughed. Breaking through to the spirit transformation realm at this critical moment gave him more confidence to survive. At this moment, a line of words appeared before his eyes. The system is about to be upgraded. It will take 3 natural days. During the upgrade, the system will not be available. Seeing this message, Lung Shiqi suddenly realized that he had not drawn a prize for a long time. The last time he had drawn a prize was when he was preparing to deal with the Beilichuan and the others' joint attack. Moreover, after a long period of accumulation, Lung Shiqi now had more than 500 system coins. However, he had not used them for the lucky draw because the basic prizes were not very useful to him. He still had a certain level of expectation for the system upgrade this time. He hoped that after the upgrade, there would be a higher level of lucky draw, and he also looked forward to the opening of some subsidiary system. After all, the system backpack that appeared after the last system upgrade was a great help to him. Not only could it store a large amount of resources, but it also gave him great flexibility in battle. 3 days. Let's wait. There's something I need to do anyway. Lung Shiqi softly muttered to himself. Then he continued to sit cross-legged and took out a light silver monster core from the system space. This was the monster core of the rank 2 monster, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. Lung Shiqi planned to fuse the beast origin battle rune again. After breaking through to the spirit transformation realm, he could fuse one more beast origin battle rune. This way he would have more choices. With the previous experience, Lung Shiqi knew that fusing the beast origin battle rune had a high requirement for the strength of his body. Therefore, he had been practicing the 8 stones horizontal training technique for the past 3 months. At this time, his body was comparable to a spirit cultivator at the 9th level of the spirit gathering realm. In addition, Lung Shiqi was now at the spirit transformation realm. Fusing the beast origin battle rune would not be as dangerous as last time. Then, Lung Shiqi swallowed the monster core of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. As soon as the demonic core entered his mouth, it turned into countless faint silver light spots and merged into his flesh and blood. Bursts of heart-wrenching pain instantly spread throughout his body. Fortunately, his physical body was relatively strong, and he began to mobilize the majestic spirit energy in his body to nourish his flesh and blood. The pain was still within the acceptable range of Lung Shiqi. Gradually, Lung Shiqi outlined the outline of a demon beast from his neck to his lower abdomen. As time passed, the pattern became clearer and clearer, finally forming the shape of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. At this moment, Lung Shiqi's body suddenly emitted a silver brilliance. The brilliance grew and covered his entire body in the blink of an eye. After 2 breaths of time, the light dissipated. Lung Shiqi's body was covered in silver, as if he had been painted with a layer of silver paint. It looked a little strange. Lung Shiqi took off his ink-flowing robe and looked down. It turned out that it wasn't that he was covered in silver, but that every inch of his skin was covered in a layer of thin silver scales. Lung Shiqi casually touched it, and felt like he was touching armor. Then he took out a dagger and stabbed at his left arm. However, the dagger only created a burst of sparks when it hit the scales, and the scales were not damaged at all. Oh, It's actually so hard. Lung Shiqi raised his eyebrows in pleasant surprise. It has to be said that his dagger was a rank 2 spirit treasure. Although he didn't use much spirit force, it could easily cut through metal and stone. Lung Shiqi smiled with satisfaction. This way, I have the flexibility of the flowing ink robe on the outside and the hardness of the scales on the inside. Ordinary attacks won't be able to hurt me. Then Lung Shiqi removed the beast origin battle pattern and put on the flowing ink robe. After adjusting his state, he began to consolidate his cultivation at the spirit transformation realm, breaking through to the spirit transformation realm, and condensing the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's beast origin battle pattern, had greatly increased his strength, but he had to constantly improve his strength. The stronger he became, the greater his chance of surviving until the end. One day later, a respectful voice came from outside his tent. "My lord, the gang leader invites you over." Lung Shiqi stopped cultivating after hearing this. He let out a sigh of relief and said, "I know." At the same time, there was a trace of doubt in his heart. What is it? However, he didn't rush out. He closed his eyes and made a strange gesture. Then his aura gradually weakened. When he opened his eyes, his aura had returned to the 9th layer of the pure spirit realm. It was Lung Shiqi who had used the aura concealing spell to hide his cultivation. Then Lung Shiqi walked out of the tent with some doubt. The moment he walked out of the tent, Ziyu obediently flew to his shoulder. When Lung Shiqi was cultivating, he would send Ziyu to guard him. He walked into Yushu's tent with Ziyu. At this moment, only Yushu was inside the tent. He was pacing back and forth as if he was hesitating about something. When he saw Lung Shiqi come in, he handed over a piece of cloth with some words written on it. It looked like a letter. Yushu said anxiously, "This is a letter sent by the leader of the Qingyan League. Take a look." Lung Shiqi hadn't seen Yushu so anxious in a long time. He knew that something was wrong, so he read the letter. Then Lung Shiqi frowned. This letter was written in Qingyan's tone. The first sentence directly told them that Qingyan had broken through to the spirit transformation realm. How is this possible? Lung Shiqi was secretly shocked. Delta Origi was the first to break through to the spirit transformation realm, because of her talent and rank 4 cultivation method. Lung Shiqi knew that he had relied on external help to break through to the spirit transformation realm. He also knew how difficult it was to break through to the spirit transformation realm. He had interacted with Qingyan a few times recently. The last time he saw him, he was only at the 9th layer of the pure spirit realm, a bit weaker than Yushu. How long had it been since then? How could he suddenly break through to the spirit transformation realm? However, since Qingyan had said so, he couldn't be lying. Cultivation was something that couldn't be hidden. There was only one explanation, and that was that Qingyan had also relied on external help to enter the spirit transformation realm. During this period of time, he must have obtained some extremely precious heavenly material and earthly treasure. After thinking about it, Lung Shiqi felt that this was very likely. At the same time, he felt a bit lucky that he had broken through in time. It didn't take long for Lung Shiqi to finish reading the letter. The main content of the letter was that Qingyan wanted to invite the leaders of the various factions to a gathering to discuss the Blood Tower. The Blood Tower was a big problem that everyone couldn't avoid. Qingyan inviting everyone to discuss and share information was indeed a good thing for everyone. However, from the tone of the letter, it seemed that Qingyan had put himself in a leading position. What do you think? Yushu's voice came at the right time. Lung Shiqi pondered for a moment and said, "We have to go." Yushu said, "Yes, but Qingyan's goal is obviously not that simple. I also specifically asked about this person. Do you know that the Qingyan League was originally made up of several factions? At first, it wasn't called the Qingyan League, but it soon became his Qingyan League. It can be seen that not only is this person ambitious, but he also has a lot of methods. Especially since he has broken through to the spirit transformation realm. If we go, I'm afraid we won't have much say." So what if he's in the spirit transformation realm? Sometimes cultivation doesn't represent strength. Agree and we'll go together. Lung Shiqi's eyes lit up. Chapter 112. The next day, Leng Shiqi and Yushu brought 10 people to the meeting place. This place was close to the Crimson Tower and far away from the other factions, so they didn't have to worry about it. After all, these 4 factions had clashed with each other more than once or twice. Their accumulated hatred had reached a point where it was difficult to resolve. If it wasn't for the Crimson Tower hanging over their heads, they wouldn't be sitting together peacefully. When they arrived, Leng Shiqi saw a round table in the distance. 4 people were already seated there. One of them was smiling and saying something, but the others all had serious expressions and didn't seem to have any intention of speaking. When they saw Leng Shiqi and Yushu arrive, a young man in a blue robe stood up and walked over. This was the leader of the Qingyan League, and the organizer of this meeting, Qingyan. Qingyan walked over with a warm smile and said, "So it's Leader Yu and Vice Leader Dark Crow. Qingyan welcomes you with open arms. Please take a seat." Yushu exchanged a few pleasantries with him and sat down. Leng Shiqi followed closely behind. As for the 10 people who came with them, they stayed where they were. After they sat down, the 2 began to exchange meaningless pleasantries. The 2 of them had found their opponents and began to flatter each other endlessly. Leng Shiqi glanced at the others. The young man across from him sat next to Qingyan, but slightly behind him. He was Qingyan's right-hand man Yin Feilin, who was at the 8th level of the pure spirit realm. The young man to Leng Shiqi's right was Hengming. He sat there expressionlessly with 2 strange purple scimitars at his waist. When he saw the 2 scimitars, Leng Shiqi was secretly envious. More than a month ago, Leng Shiqi had also fought with Hengming. Although he won, his scimitars were left with 2 thin cracks. He had been injured by Meng Ming's level 4 spirit tool. Leng Shiqi had even planned to assassinate Hengming, but he was too cautious and could not find a suitable opportunity. Leng Shiqi was slightly surprised by the person sitting next to Hengming. He was Extreme Evil. He was the leader of the Triad Alliance, Extreme Evil, who led the Leng Shiqi to the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile 3 months ago. Unexpectedly, after a few twists and turns, he actually ran to Seiji. Extreme Evil and Hengming were both at the 9th level of the pure spirit realm. At this moment, the people from the 3 major forces were all here. Only Blood Moon was left. Not long after, the Delta Orgi also arrived. Even from afar, she didn't hide her powerful aura of the spirit transformation realm. Qingyan let out a soft snort. His spirit force moved, and the same aura of the spirit transformation realm surged out. 2 powerful auras collided with a loud bang, stirring up a gust of wind, blowing the gravel under their feet. However, Leng Shiqi sensed that although Qingyan's aura looked very powerful at first glance, it was a bit lacking. In fact, there was even a faint sense of impatience in his aura. It seems that he did indeed rely on external items to forcefully break through. Leng Shiqi thought to himself. However, he didn't understand why the Delta Orgi would so openly announce that she had broken through to the spirit transformation realm. Leng Shiqi knew that the Delta Orgi had the aura concealment technique. She could completely hide her cultivation and use it at a critical moment to catch others off guard. However, since the Delta Orgi had made such a choice, she must have her reasons. Leng Shiqi didn't ask too much. "Ha ha ha, Moonlord Blood Moon's cultivation is indeed profound. Please take a seat." Qingyan took the initiative to disperse his spirit pressure and laughed. However, there was a layer of sweat on his palms hidden in his sleeves. The Delta Orgi also withdrew her spirit force and raised her chin like a proud white swan before sitting down. Achin looked at her with respect but didn't sit down. Instead, he stood respectfully behind the Delta Orgi. Seeing that everyone was here, Qingyan said, "Everyone, it has been a 1.5 years since we arrived on the Blood Fog Island. There were more than 10,000 people who came here, but what about now? Only 100 or so people remain. It can be said that those who have survived until now are 1 in 100, and the few of you here are 1 in 1,000. I believe in your talent, perseverance, and..." Just as Qingyan was talking, Xiongming suddenly said, "Get to the point." Qingyan's expression darkened when Xiongming interrupted him so rudely, but he didn't lose his temper. Instead, he continued, "In short, none of you want to die, right?" Everyone's expressions changed when they heard this. That's right, these people could be said to be the most powerful people on the Blood Fog Island. They enjoyed large amounts of resources and constantly worked hard to improve themselves. Why? Was it for the so-called power of the guild master? Perhaps, but definitely not all of it. This was because they knew that these were all rootless waters. If they couldn't leave the island, then it wouldn't take long for them to be devoured by the endless void. Their ultimate goal was to get out alive. This blood-red tower was the last obstacle that stood in their way. Qin Yan continued. Based on the current situation, the blood-red sky will shrink to where we are in about a month's time. In other words, we must enter the blood fog tower in a month. There are 4 entrances to the blood fog tower. I'm sure everyone knows this, but I suggest that we work together to enter one of the entrances. That way, we'll be able to gather the strength of everyone on the blood fog island, and our chances of survival will increase exponentially. Qin Yan carefully observed everyone's expressions after saying this. However, each of them was smarter than the other, and none of them showed any emotion. Leng Shiqi and Yushu looked at each other, and the former secretly signaled with their eyes that they couldn't agree. Putting everything else aside, who would they listen to if the 4 forces joined forces? The leaders of these factions were all proud and arrogant people, and none of them would refuse to listen to anyone else. In addition, they couldn't forget that there had been many fierce conflicts in the past 3 months. Even if they forced themselves to work together, they wouldn't trust each other at all. Delta Origi was the first to object. I don't agree. Qinyan League leader, if this is all you want, then I'll take my leave. I don't agree either, said Meng Shiqi. Yushu also spoke up. That's right. Since there are 4 entrances to the Blood Fog Tower, each of us can have one. Why should we force ourselves to work together? Plus, everyone knows that even if we work together, we won't trust each other. Qinyan didn't expect the other 3 to reject him so decisively. At this moment, his face turned gloomy. Chapter 113. When Qinyan saw that the others had rejected his suggestion so decisively, he shouted, "You'll regret this." As soon as he finished speaking, a few dozen figures vaguely appeared in the distance and surrounded them. Hengming silently gripped the hilt of his saber. Extreme Evil said, "What? Does the Qinyan League leader want to keep us here?" The atmosphere in the room became tense. Qinyan stared at Extreme Evil, then suddenly struck out with his palm. A powerful palm energy mixed with a scorching heat swept over. Extreme Evil was shocked, but he did not panic. He struck out a few times in succession, and the wind generated by his palms was not weak either. But when Azure Flame's palm force met Extreme Fiend's palm force, it immediately crushed it as easily as crushing dry weeds. Extreme Evil's expression finally changed, and he hurriedly backed away. At this moment, Hengming moved and struck out with his sabers. 2 sharp sabers completely shattered the last of the palm energy. Hengming's eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared straight at Qinyan. Qinyan said, "Don't worry, I don't mean any harm." As soon as he finished speaking, he struck out with his palm again. And his target was Leng Shiqi. If you still want to show off. When Leng Shiqi saw Qinyan attacking Extreme Evil and himself, he knew what Qinyan was planning. Faced with Qinyan's powerful palm energy, Leng Shiqi also struck out with his own palm energy. The palm energy was not strong, but it brought about a strong gust of wind, and within the gust of wind, there was also a trace of coldness. The scorching palm energy and the cold gust of wind collided, and a sizzling sound was heard. The 2 forces, one hot and one cold, were evenly matched. Qinyan's heart sank, and he felt a little embarrassed. He secretly increased his strength, but the result was that he still could not defeat Leng Shiqi. At that moment, Yushu stood up, his hand gripping the hilt of his saber. It seemed as though he would attack at any moment. Seeing this, Qinyan withdrew his palm with a gloomy face. Leng Shiqi stood silently beside Yushu. At this moment, Seiji and the Yushu clan members were pressuring Qinyan. If Qinyan dared to attack again, they would join forces and attack him. He didn't seem to fear a spirit transformation realm expert at all. Qinyan was also in great pain. He originally planned to display his strength as a spirit transformation realm cultivator, to intimidate the Seiji and the Yushu clan. He wanted them to know how powerful he was, and that cooperating with him was the wisest decision. His targets were not Hengming and Yushu, but Extreme Evil and Leng Shiqi. However, he didn't expect to lose to Leng Shiqi. Although they were evenly matched, he was one realm higher than Leng Shiqi. This result made it seem as if he, a spirit transformation realm cultivator, was not very powerful. As a result, he couldn't say what he wanted to say. He could only watch them leave with a dark expression. Before Extreme Evil left, he said to him, "I thought the Qingyan League's leader was very powerful, but it seems like he's only so." Qingyan didn't speak, but his fists were clenched tightly. No one had expected the meeting to end so quickly. The main reason was that everyone had vaguely guessed Qingyan's purpose before coming. They wanted to get some information from him, but it ended before they could do anything. If it was just Yushu and Qingyan, it might have been possible. However, Delta Origi and Hengming were not the type to chat for half a day. They both went straight to the point, which led to the gathering ending so quickly. However, after everyone left, Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi secretly met. They exchanged information about the blood-colored tower as soon as they arrived, but unfortunately, there was nothing valuable. After all, no one could get close to the blood-colored tower. Leng Shiqi said with a serious expression, "We will enter the blood-colored tower in a month." Delta Origi's expression was also very serious. They both knew that there were only two outcomes after entering the blood-colored tower: get out or die. This might be their last meeting. However, neither of them showed any other emotions. Take care. Break through to the spirit transformation realm as soon as possible. After that, the two of them left. Leng Shiqi turned around with a hesitant expression. In the end, he circulated his spiritual energy and released the spiritual pressure of the spirit transformation realm. Delta Origi's eyes lit up when she felt this spiritual pressure. At that moment, she suddenly heard the sound of something breaking through the air behind her. She leaned slightly to the side and reached out with 2 fingers. It was an emerald jade hairpin. Leng Shiqi returned to the Yushu clan and went straight to his tent to consolidate his cultivation. 2 days later, he had completely consolidated his cultivation. At the same time, a notification appeared before him. System upgrade complete. Leng Shiqi immediately called out the system and looked at his information. Name: Leng Shiqi Lu Xingji Cultivation. Spirit Transformation Realm Level 1 Cultivation Method. Rank 3 Cultivation Method. Moonlight Cloud Manual Rank 3 Cultivation Method. Beast Origin Demonic Technique Bloodline. Spiritual Skills. Rank 2 Spiritual Skill. Heavy Cross Spear Mastery Rank 2 Spiritual Skill. Formation Breaking Spear Mastery Rank 2 Spiritual Skill. 6 Yang Palms Mastery Level 2 Spiritual Technique. Wind Catching Kick. Level 2 Spiritual Skill Mountain Destroying Finger. Perfection Level 2 Spiritual Skill. Mysterious Cloud Spike. Rank 3 Spiritual Skill. Channel Breaking Sword Aura System Coins. 521. There were no changes to his information. He then looked at the system interface and saw that there was an additional word: map. Leng Shiqi immediately opened the map, and a circular map appeared in front of him. However, 99% of the map was black. There was only a small white dot at the bottom right corner. Leng Shiqi guessed, "Is this a fog map?" Then he opened the map and sank into the ground. As he continued to move, more and more white areas appeared on the map. He could clearly see some of the terrain in the white areas, but that was it. With this map, I don't have to worry about things like fog formations, but it doesn't seem to be very useful. Maybe there are other functions. I'll slowly explore it in the future. Leng Shiqi thought as he returned to the tent. Then he opened the lottery interface that he had the most hope for. When he clicked on it, he saw that there were 3 lottery options. He was delighted. The 3 options were beginner lottery, intermediate lottery, and unlimited lottery. At this moment, all 3 options were lit up. Leng Shiqi clicked on the question mark next to the intermediate lottery. He found out that it costs 100 system coins to enter the intermediate lottery. He had always thought that he had saved up a lot of system coins, but now it seemed that he only had enough for 5 draws. This made Leng Shiqi feel very helpless, so he muttered to himself, "The beginner lottery only costs 10 system coins, but the intermediate lottery costs 10 times more. Is the intermediate lottery really that valuable?" Chapter 114. Lung Shiqi was surprised at the amount of system coins required for the intermediate lottery. However, after thinking about it, his Hand of the Earth was an intermediate prize. The Hand of the Earth had now been developed to a very high level. It could be said to be a combination of restriction, escape, defense, and attack. Moreover, it did not require any hand seals. It was simply amazing. Thinking of this, Lung Shiqi felt relieved. As the saying goes, you get what you pay for. The value of the intermediate prize was definitely not something that the beginner prize could compare to. Then Lung Shiqi clicked on the intermediate lottery option and chose 5 consecutive draws. After a burst of rainbow-colored light, congratulations to the host for obtaining the intermediate prize. Voice-changing technique. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the intermediate prize. Fairy talisman. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the intermediate prize. Soul essence. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the intermediate prize. Righteous thunder orb. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the intermediate prize. Frost sword aura. Voice-changing technique. Looking at the 5 prizes, Lung Shiqi felt that the most interesting one was the voice-changing technique. After picking it up, he found that it was a level 2 spiritual skill. Lung Shiqi did not hesitate and directly used his unlimited skill points to cultivate the voice-changing technique to the maximum level. Then Lung Shiqi coughed lightly and his voice became rough. Lung Shiqi adjusted it again. His voice was sometimes hoarse, sometimes deep, and sometimes sharp. He could even imitate the voices of children and women. Not only that, he could even imitate the voices of small animals. The intermediate prize is indeed extraordinary, Lung Shiqi said with a hint of joy. The voice-changing technique seemed useless, but if used ingeniously, it could produce unexpected results. Then Lung Shiqi picked up the fairy talisman. It was a square gem with a dark blue orb inlaid in the middle. It was tied with a simple string. A line of information appeared beside it. After wearing it, it can speed up the recovery of spiritual power. Lung Shiqi was delighted when he saw this line of words. Oh, not bad. One had to know that as one's cultivation increased, the time it took to recover spiritual power would become longer. If they were in a dangerous environment, the sooner they recovered their spiritual energy, the more confident they would be. Lung Shiqi directly put the fairy amulet on his neck, and sure enough, he felt the spiritual power in his body become more agile. He chuckled and reached out to touch the wisp of light green flame-like thing floating in the air. It was a wisp of soul essence. Lung Shiqi didn't know who or what this soul essence belonged to, but he knew from the item's information that as long as he absorbed this soul essence, his mental power would increase greatly. With a curl of his finger, the soul essence flew toward him and entered between his eyebrows. In the blink of an eye, Lung Shiqi felt refreshed, and then there was a buzzing sound in his head, as if something had been opened. His vision suddenly went black, and when he could see again, he found himself in a narrow and dark space. To his surprise, he had turned into a small ball of green light. He controlled himself to shake around, but didn't find anything special. However, not long after, his vision went black again. Lung Shiqi opened his eyes, but immediately felt a sharp pain in his head, causing him to groan in pain. Did I overuse my mental power? This was because he had extracted the blood of many demonic beasts, and this process also consumed a lot of mental energy. He remembered that when he extracted the blood of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile and several rank 1 monsters, a similar situation occurred. It seems that the dark space should also be related to mental power. In short, it's a good thing. Lung Shiqi murmured. Next, he picked up the purple-blue bead. This bead was half the size of a fist, and there were a few lightning runes engraved on it. When he picked up the bead, he saw the information about it, and then Lung Shiqi hurriedly stored it in the system space. The information said, Righteous lightning bead, a one-time consumable. Its power is equivalent to the full power attack of a spirit cultivator in the middle stage of the spirit transformation realm. It has additional damage to evil things. It was equivalent to the full power attack of a spirit cultivator in the middle stage of the spirit transformation realm. Lung Shiqi dared to say that if he threw out this bead, no one in the current Blood Mist Island would be able to block it. With this, he was more confident about the battle that would take place a month later. Finally, he picked up the small booklet. This was the rank 3 spiritual skill, Frost Sword Chi. He still used unlimited skill points to cultivate it to perfection in a short period of time. And then his eyes revealed a pondering expression. This Frost Sword Chi was similar to the unblocking Meridian Sword Chi that he had cultivated before. However, the unblocking Meridian Sword Chi's specialty was to seal the meridians and block the circulation of spirit energy, while the Frost Sword Chi had a dense cold air and had the effect of freezing. The two were comparable. However, Lung Shiqi had already integrated the channel unfolding sword aura into the mesmerizing eyes of flowers technique. Thus, he planned to do his best to integrate the frigid frost sword aura into it in the next month. With the previous example, it would be relatively easier. This way, he could target different opponents and choose between the chaotic blossom dazzling eyes with the unblocking Meridian Sword Chi, or the Frost Sword Chi. As a result, this move became even more flexible. After counting all the prizes, Lung Shiqi was very satisfied because every item was very useful and made him feel that it was very worth it. He was still thinking about whether or not to secretly fill his pockets and get something from the sect to draw a few more times. After ending the intermediate lottery, Lung Shiqi called out the system interface again, and his gaze fell on the lit-up, unlimited lottery. This unlimited lottery really gave him unlimited possibilities. The first time, he had drawn unlimited skill points. Lung Shiqi was very clear that if it wasn't for this godly prize, he might not have reached where he was today. The second time, he had drawn the Hand of the Earth, a special spiritual skill with endless uses. If it wasn't for the Hand of the Earth, he wouldn't have accidentally entered the underground space, and it would be even more impossible for him to obtain the demonic beast technique and have his current cultivation and combat strength. The most important thing was that he wouldn't have known that the second Heaven's Bane was coming. Otherwise, he might have died in the Heaven's Bane. It could be said that they were all linked, so from a certain point of view, the Hand of the Earth was no less helpful to Lung Shiqi than the unlimited skill points. Now that Lung Shiqi had another unlimited lottery chance, he was naturally looking forward to it. Phew! Lung Shiqi exhaled heavily, raised his finger, and clicked on the unlimited lottery option. He stared at the dazzling light in the system without blinking. After a few breaths of time, the light dissipated, and he didn't see anything. Just when he thought he had seen wrongly, a line of words appeared in front of him. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the advanced prize. Supercilious eyes. Chapter 115. A month passed in the blink of an eye. The strange thing was that no danger had appeared on Bloodmist Island during this month. Everyone on Bloodmist Island had been cultivating peacefully for a month. The only thing they did during this month was cultivate, and cultivate. What they needed to do was to wantonly consume resources and strive to become stronger. Yushu, with the support of a large amount of resources, finally crossed the bottleneck 2 days ago and entered the spirit transformation realm. But today, the Yushu clan was a little special. At this moment, everyone in the Yushu clan was celebrating. They took out all the food and water to share. They talked to each other, and some people even did strange and ugly dances. Everyone's faces were filled with happy smiles. Yushu was surrounded by the crowd, wantonly throwing a tantrum. He was jumping around excitedly, completely like a child. Of course, with their age, they were still children. Lung Shiqi sent out Ziyu to patrol everyone in the sky. Then, he sneaked into a tent when no one was paying attention. Usually, this tent stored a large amount of the Yushu clan's weapons, but they were going to enter the Blood Tower tomorrow, so all the spiritual weapons were distributed. At this moment, there were only a dozen or so unranked weapons left in the tent. Lung Shiqi's target just happened to be these weapons that no one wanted. A dozen or so unranked weapons and my remaining system coins should be enough for 2 intermediate lottery draws. Lung Shiqi muttered to himself as he walked into the tent. During this month, Blood Fog Island seemed to have completely fallen into silence. Not only did they not cause any trouble, but even the demon beasts had disappeared. This gave Lung Shiqi, who wanted to obtain system coins, a headache, so he could only set his sights on his own home. Lung Shiqi casually picked up a scimitar and naturally waited for the system prompt. However, the strange thing was that after a few breaths of time, the system prompt did not appear. Lung Shiqi blinked in confusion and flipped through the weapon in his hand, but there was still no system prompt. Then Lung Shiqi picked up several other weapons, but the result was the same. He couldn't help but frown as he muttered, "What's going on? Did the system malfunction?" He then pulled out the dagger hidden at his ankle, and a system message immediately appeared before his eyes. Worth 29 system coins. Do you wish to sell? No. Of course, Lung Shiqi couldn't sell this level 2 spiritual tool, but at least the system notification appeared. After pondering for a moment, he seemed to have thought of something. He immediately walked out of the tent and borrowed a level 1 spirit tool from someone. It's worth 17 system coins. Will you sell it? No. Lung Shiqi returned the weapon. He had an answer in his heart, but it was an answer he did not want to accept. That was after the upgrade. The system no longer needed those low-grade resources. Lung Shiqi didn't know if the system's standards were too high, or if it was too arrogant, but the system's change suddenly disrupted his plan. Just as he was having a headache, Yushu suddenly appeared and pulled Lung Shiqi away, shouting as he walked, "Come, come, come, I'll pull the dark crow over." Immediately, a group of people rushed over and surrounded them in the middle. They danced and shouted, "Brother Yi! Oh, 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 oh! Roar, 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 roar!" Endless enthusiasm instantly drowned Lung Shiqi, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, he could only put aside all the doubts and guesses in his heart and celebrate with everyone. This was the first time since he came to this world that he had let down all his guard and vigilance. Perhaps this would also be the last time. Under the blood-red sky, a group of young men who came from nowhere and whose names were unknown were dancing with all their might. After a long time, the tired people went to rest. Today no one was arranged to keep watch, but Yushu and Lung Shiqi personally kept watch. At this time, Yushu was leaning against a wooden chair, gnawing on a fruit with difficulty, burping from time to time. Lung Shiqi directly sat on the ground, leaning against a wooden pillar. The blood-red sky outside was not far from their camp. In about a day or so, it would devour the camp. In other words, tomorrow, they must enter the blood-red tower. Whether they live or die, it will be decided tomorrow. To be honest, even Lung Shiqi was not confident in his own heart. After all, no one knew what kind of danger they would encounter. As for whether they could survive in the end, he did not know. The fear of the unknown had always been in everyone's heart, so tonight was their first and last time to celebrate. Hehehe, don't you think it's strange? At this time, Yushu's voice came, pulling him back from his thoughts. Lung Shiqi glanced at him and asked cooperatively, "What's strange?" Yushu continued, "We're about to enter the blood-red tower, but I don't feel nervous at all. In fact, I feel a little excited when I think about it. I heard that if a person is extremely hungry, they won't feel hungry anymore." Are you saying that I'm afraid? Yushu said unhappily. It's normal to be afraid. Who on Blood Fog Island is not afraid at this time? What about you? Lung Shiqi laughed self-deprecatingly and said, "Of course I'm afraid. I'm afraid of dying here." "Oh, okay. I admit that I'm afraid too. I thought you would hold on a little longer." "Ha ha ha, you've admitted it. What's there to be afraid of? But Brother Lung, don't you think I'm really funny?" Yushu's voice suddenly became serious. Lung Shiqi glanced at him and asked, "How are you funny?" Yushu pondered for a moment and said, "In the past, when I formed the Yushu clan, I didn't have any feelings for the people under me. I only saw them as tools. Of course, they might have seen me like that too. But we've gone through so many hardships together, so many storms to get to where we are today. How can I be heartless to them?" At this point, his eyes were a little red and he continued, But when I have feelings for them, I still have to continue using them as tools. Especially tomorrow. I can't bear it, but I have to do it because I want to live. I don't think I'm wrong, but I feel guilty in my heart. I'm in pain. I don't know what to do. Haha, don't you think I'm funny?" Lung Shiqi listened to him quietly. He thought that Yushu actually had such a side to him. He thought for a moment and asked, Do you know what a cold-blooded animal is? Seeing Leng Shiqi suddenly ask such a question, Yushu was a little confused, but he still replied, snake? Yes, but you might not know. There's an animal whose blood is 10 times, 100 times colder than a snake. What animal? Leng Shiqi said a word softly, people. Yushu frowned. People are the most cold-blooded animals in the world, including you and me. So you don't feel pain at all. Do you think you have feelings for them? You're wrong. That's just what you think. Leng Shiqi looked at Yushu with a look of disbelief and continued. If you don't believe me, I'll only ask you one question. Do you remember who Qishui is? Qishu. Yushu opened his mouth. He clearly knew this person, but when he thought of him, he couldn't remember who he was. Friend. Enemy? Oh, so he's my subordinate. He's the one who helped me build the foundation of the Yushu clan. He's dead. He seems to have died in the Battle of Puppets. What does he look like again? Thinking of this, Yushu suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He couldn't help but shiver. It seemed that even his blood was frozen. After a while, Yushu laughed softly, but gradually his laughter became louder and louder. He even laughed until tears flowed out of his eyes. Yushu raised his hand and wiped the tears from his eyes. The corners of his eyes were red. You're right. I'm a cold-blooded animal. I'm asking for trouble. Leng Shiqi didn't answer. Instead, he looked at the blood-red light in the sky. After an unknown amount of time, the blood-red light became fainter. He knew that it was almost dawn. Yushu stood up and stretched. He seemed to have returned to normal. He looked at the sky and then looked at Leng Shiqi. He said, Aren't you going to see her? Leng Shiqi also stood up. He brushed the dust off his body and said, No need. We'll meet again if we have the chance. After saying that, he turned around and walked into his tent. Before he entered the tent, he tossed out something. Yushu stretched out his hand to catch it. Taking a closer look, he saw that it was a white pill. It was the antidote for the heart-destroying pill. Chapter 116. The next day, a total of 46 people from the Yushu clan stood in front of the blood-colored tower. They were all expressionless and didn't have any food or water on them. Behind them, the camp was long gone. Only this blood-colored tower remained on the entire Blood Fog Island. Whether they lived or died would be decided today. Yushu, who had always stood at the front, was now standing in the middle of everyone. Leng Shiqi, who was wearing a mask, was standing beside him. However, at this moment, Leng Shiqi was also wearing a large white cloak with a large hood covering half of his face. He was carrying a sword on his back. Everyone looked at the dark door not far away. It was like a giant mouth from the underworld that wanted to devour everyone. Let's go. There were no heroic words, no passion, and no inspiring words. Just like that, Yushu said these two words lightly. In an instant, everyone's breathing became heavy. Everyone pulled out their weapons and stepped into the blood-colored tower. At the same time, the people from the other three forces also entered. Not long after they entered, the blood-colored sky completely swallowed up the entire place, leaving only this tower. When Leng Shiqi and the others entered the tower, they could only see one thing, and that was fog. What a thick fog! It was several times thicker than the fog outside. They could not see more than 10 feet away. Everyone channeled their spirit force into their eyes to see better, but they could only see about 2 feet away. Only Leng Shiqi and Yushu, who were at the spirit transformation realm, could see about 4 to 5 feet away. At this time, there was no need for Yushu to remind them. Everyone raised their vigilance and carefully walked inside. Crack. However, all of a sudden, someone stepped on something and made a sound. Leng Shiqi knew that something was wrong. He opened up his perception and clenched the sword in his hand. Sure enough, there was a series of caw-caw sounds coming from all around. It was like the sound of a mechanism being activated. Soon after, there was a dense sound of something breaking through the air. However, because the fog was too thick, it was impossible to tell what it was or where it came from. Leng Shiqi felt that he couldn't be too passive. He immediately struck out with his palm, causing a huge gust of wind to blow away the surrounding fog. After blowing away the fog, he saw that dozens of pitch-black nails had already shot towards his head. The Lung Shichi's swords danced in the air, blocking all the black nails with clanking sounds. However, Lung Shichi and Yushu were standing in the crowd, so they received the least amount of black nails, but the others were different. This was especially true for the group of people at the outermost perimeter. Hundreds of black spikes rained down like raindrops. Even though these people were all in the pure spirit realm, in the face of so many black nails, it was still difficult for them to resist for a while, and screams immediately rose and fell. After a round of black nails, it finally quieted down. Yushu immediately said, "Count the casualties." Sect Master, 5 brothers died, and 8 were injured. Hua Lingling quickly asked and replied. They hadn't done anything yet, but so many people had died. Yushu's face suddenly became a little ugly. Lung Shichi said at this time, "Don't worry, there shouldn't be many of these traps. Otherwise, it would be meaningless for us to all die under the traps." Yushu nodded thoughtfully after hearing this, but at this moment, a ghostly figure suddenly flashed through the fog. Then there was a scream. A person suddenly fell to the ground. Everyone hurriedly looked over, and then there was the sound of people sucking in cold air one after another. It turned out that there was a huge hole in the person's chest, and the heart inside had disappeared. Who is it? What is it? If the people who died under the black nails just now were not strong enough, then this time it was not a matter of strength. They didn't even see the opponent and died in an instant. This kind of danger and fear were much greater than the traps. Some people were already a little panicked. "Don't panic, back to back," Yushu shouted, and everyone immediately followed. But in the blink of an eye, another person suddenly died, and even the weapon in his hand was broken in half. Everyone's heart sank even more, and an atmosphere of panic emerged. Knowing that this could not go on, Lung Shichi's eyes under the hood suddenly changed. The veins around his eyes bulged, and his pupils turned green and white. Byakugan activate. Byakugan was a high-level ocular skill from the anime world. It had a 360-degree field of vision with no blind spots, and super insight that could see through things. It could also see the amount and flow of energy in the body. It was a powerful ocular skill that combined detection, anti-detection, and the ability to see through weaknesses. After activating Byakugan, Lung Shichi's field of vision suddenly expanded to a full range of vision. The world in his eyes turned black and white, and there were dozens of red and blue balls of light around him. Those were the spiritual energy and meridians of the Yushu clan. However, Lung Shichi's attention was not on these people, because he immediately caught sight of a spiritual energy that was not very large, but abnormally terrifying. The owner of that spiritual energy was extremely fast, and constantly swam around, as if looking for a suitable prey. Lung Shichi quietly nudged Yushu, indicating that he should follow him. Yushu nodded in understanding. Then Lung Shichi suddenly stomped his foot, and then a mud wall more than a foot thick appeared in a strange place. Everyone was baffled when they saw this. However, in the blink of an eye, the mud wall suddenly shattered. A short figure appeared there. When Lung Shichi erected the mud wall, he had already rushed over on the black fog, and at this moment he unceremoniously swung his sword. This saber light was even sharper than before, and it had reached a length of nearly 3 meters. In addition, another sword that was not weaker than his followed closely behind, and the 2 sword lights whistled as they slashed towards the figure. Unfortunately, the figure was extremely agile, and Lung Shichi's sword light only grazed the side of the figure, while Yushu directly slashed empty air. However, Lung Shichi had already used Byakugan's observation ability to predict this step in advance. His left palm lit up with a faint brilliance, and then he quickly formed a few spiritual seals with one hand, and fiercely pushed them forward. Then, a majestic cold energy surged out from his palm, and rushed towards the figure. Wherever the cold energy went, a layer of ice crystals instantly formed on the ground. This was one of the results of Lung Shichi's fusion of spiritual techniques. He fused Spirit Strike and Ice spread into 2 spiritual techniques, Spirit Strike, Path of Ice. The key point was that the direction of Lung Shichi's attack wasn't directly aimed at the figure, but slightly slanted. However, the strange thing was that when the figure moved, it actually ran into the cold energy. It was as if it purposely ran into it. Lung Shiqi had used Byakugan to predict the direction that the figure was going to move in. The huge cold energy directly swallowed the figure, and in the blink of an eye, it condensed into a thick layer of ice crystals and froze it. Only then did everyone see that the figure was actually a small monkey half the height of a person, but this monkey's aura was that of a rank 2 monster. Chapter 117. When everyone saw what had attacked them, the fear in their hearts lessened. Although this demon monkey was a rank 2 demonic beast, the Yushu clan had dealt with rank 2 demonic beasts in the past few months, so they had some confidence. What are you waiting for? Get ready to attack. Yushu shouted. Everyone quickly moved in an orderly manner, surrounding the demon monkey. Every one of their weapons shone with rays of spiritual light, and their spiritual techniques were ready to be unleashed. Kacha! A crack appeared on the ice crystal that froze the demon monkey. Then the crack spread out like a spider web. Attack! Under Yushu's command, dozens of different attacks landed on the demon monkey one after another. Lung Shiqi was not in a hurry to attack. He was waiting for an opportunity. Bang! The ice finally shattered, and the demon monkey broke free. However, just as it was about to break free, dozens of attacks also arrived at its side. The demon monkey seemed to have some intelligence, and it quickly dodged. However, even though it was fast and dodged many attacks, dozens of people's weapons still hit the demon monkey. Although this demon monkey was a rank 2 demonic beast, it was different from the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. It was very fast, but its defense was average. Dozens of people left many wounds on its body. Gag. The demon monkey bared its teeth and roared a few times. Its body emitted a tyrannical aura. Its 2 small eyes looked left and right, and then it pounced on a person nearby. The demon monkey was too fast. That person did not even have time to react before he felt a chill in his chest. He looked down and saw that his chest was empty. That person fell limply to the ground. However, it also created an opportunity for others. In the blink of an eye, more wounds appeared on its body. However, the demon monkey did not care about its injuries. It jumped left and right in the crowd, and every time it jumped, it would dig out a person's heart. Not long after, 5 people had already died in its hands. Lung Shiqi continued to observe silently. He did not attack because he knew that his speed was not as fast as the demon monkey. If he joined the battle, he would still be led by the nose. He had to find an opportunity to heavily injure the demon monkey. Just as the 7th person fell, Lung Shiqi suddenly moved. The wounded monkey demon finally slowed down a little. It stopped for a moment when it took out a heart and landed on the ground. At this moment, Lung Shiqi used Ghost Parade and Confusion Footwork at the same time, turning into an afterimage as he rushed over. At the same time, his spirit saber slashed out, and a gorgeous crescent-shaped saber light swept out. Half Moonlight Slash. Now that he had broken through to the spirit transformation realm, the power of all his spiritual techniques had reached a new level. The glaring blade light enveloped the entire demon monkey. However, just as the blade light was about to land, the demon monkey's body suddenly erupted with boundless blood-red light. The bloody light was extremely viscous, greatly hindering the saber light. At this moment, the hair on the demon monkey's body stood on end, and its color gradually turned blood red. What was even more terrifying was that its body was constantly expanding. In the blink of an eye, the demon monkey that was only half the height of a human grew into a giant monkey that was 2 feet tall. Lung Shiqi's half-moonlight slash tore through the bloody light and slashed at the demon monkey's waist. However, the saber light only cut a few inches into the demon monkey's abdomen. The demon monkey was in extreme pain. It roared and slammed its arms down. Boom! The unknown floor of the underground exploded with a loud bang, and the broken pieces shot out, injuring many people. However, Lung Shiqi, who was originally standing there, had long disappeared and appeared behind the demon monkey. Seeing the demon monkey's change, Lung Shiqi was not surprised but happy. The demon monkey seemed to be much stronger, and its strength was incomparable, but it had also lost its speed, which was the most troublesome thing to him. It was also at this moment that a so sound was heard. A golden rope suddenly flew over and tightly wrapped around the demon monkey. Leng Shiqi glanced over and saw that it was Yushu who threw the rope. He immediately slashed out again. The others were not stupid, and they knew that this was an excellent opportunity, so they all made their moves. Puff, puff, puff. Many more wounds appeared on the demon monkey's body, and blood seeped out from its body. The demon monkey kept twisting its body, trying to break free from the rope. Fortunately, the rope was a rank 2 spirit treasure, and Yushu was also at the spirit transformation realm. Although he was far weaker than the demon monkey, he could still hold on for a short period of time. The demon monkey that was bound by the rope could only wait to be slaughtered, especially by Leng Shiqi. Every time Leng Shiqi attacked, he would cause obvious wounds to the demon monkey. Furthermore, Leng Shiqi would secretly shoot out a few strands of imbuing meridian sword chi to further weaken the demon monkey. Roar, roar. The demon monkey suddenly let out a roar. It raised its arms and broke the rope. Everyone thought that the rope could hold on for a while, but they were all shocked. The demon monkey's arms swung out violently, instantly sending a few people flying. Those people were trapped in the dense fog, and it was unknown if they were still alive. However, Leng Shiqi and Yushu were both happy because they could feel that the demon monkey's aura was rapidly weakening. It wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Yushu rushed over with his blade in both hands and slashed out 2 blade lights. When the blade lights got close, they turned into dozens of blade lights that landed on the demon monkey's body. Leng Shiqi gently jumped and used the half-moon light slash again, ruthlessly chopping at the demon monkey's head. The rest of the people didn't hesitate and used their strongest spirit skills to attack. After a few breaths of time, the demon monkey's huge body fell to the ground. Phew! Everyone let out a sigh of relief. Leng Shiqi took out a dagger and stabbed it into the demon monkey's head. Then he took out a fingernail-sized demon core and put it away. The others didn't react at all. They knew that the ones who contributed the most in the battle were Yushu and his vice leader. Yushu didn't say anything, so they wouldn't say anything. Moreover, they didn't have the demon core. After the demon monkey died, the fog in the area quickly dissipated. Not long after, everyone saw a pitch-black passageway not too far away. That should be the entrance to the next level. Leng Shiqi said. Yushu nodded and said to everyone, "There shouldn't be any danger now, but we can't let our guard down. Those who are injured heal first. The rest of you, take turns to recover your spirit power." "Yes," everyone answered. Yushu looked around, and the more he looked, the worse his expression became. Because he saw 17 corpses on the ground. That meant that there were only 29 of them left. It had only been 30 minutes since they entered and so many people had died. This was only the first level. What kind of danger would there be? Yushu looked at the dark tunnel with a gloomy expression, and felt a little uneasy. Chapter 118. On the first floor of the blood-colored tower, the Yushu clan members were still taking turns to recover their spiritual power. But at this moment, a sudden change occurred. A few huge cracks suddenly appeared on the ground, and under the cracks, they could vaguely see the endless void. Everyone was startled. Leng Shiqi was the same, because a crack had appeared beside him. Fortunately, he reacted quickly and hurriedly dodged it. Yushu hurriedly said, "Not good, let's go." Everyone no longer cared about recovering their spiritual power, and hurriedly ran into the dark passage. When the last person ran in, the ground outside had already shattered. Below them was the void that could swallow everything. Yushu turned around and saw that no one had fallen into the void, so he heaved a sigh of relief. Rumble! Then, before everyone could react, they felt their bodies shake, and the ground under their feet began to gradually rise. Leng Shiqi understood that this should be the way to the second floor. After a few seconds, the ground under their feet returned to normal, and a spacious circular space appeared in front of them. There was no fog in this space, and the place was about 200 to 300 feet in radius. Upon closer inspection, there were all kinds of strange patterns engraved on the walls. Leng Shiqi was familiar with these patterns, as he had seen many of them in the underground space, and the patterns on the walls were arrays. He immediately reminded everyone, "Be careful, there are arrays here." However, just as he finished speaking, all the arrays on the walls lit up. Immediately, everyone felt a huge suction force pulling them directly to the center of the second floor. After everyone had steadied themselves, wooden puppets walked out of the array formation one after another. These puppets were all humanoid and looked extremely exquisite, much better than the ones they saw in the wetlands. There were exactly 30 puppets. Moreover, these puppets were all different. The one at the front held a shield and an axe, the one at the back held a halberd, and the last one held a bow and arrow. This was like a small combat army. The 30 puppets surrounded everyone in 3 layers. Their originally empty eyes lit up with different colors of light. There weren't many people in the Yushu clan who had fought against humanoid puppets before. Back then, most of them were still in the spirit-gathering realm, and were dealing with the lion-shaped puppets and the demonic beasts that came later. But even then, they knew that the greatest threat amongst the puppets was the archer puppets. He had to deal with the archer puppet first. However, before they could do anything, the puppets had already pressed down on them. In particular, the 10 archer puppets at the back all pulled out the bows on their backs and fired in unison. 10 sharp arrows flew over. Lung Shiqi and Yushu each blocked 2 arrows. The others were already prepared. Those who could dodge, and those who could block, blocked. After a round of arrows, only 2 of them were slightly injured. Surprisingly, none of them died. However, they weren't happy because the shield axe puppets and halberd-wielding puppets had already surrounded them. The clan members hurriedly went up to fight fiercely. However, this also meant that they couldn't be distracted and constantly guard against the arrows. Thump! Blood is no different stabbed the shield of the shield axe puppet, but it only made a small hole. One had to know that blood is no different was already in the late stage of the pure spirit realm, and wielded a second stage spiritual weapon. Even so, he was unable to cause any substantial damage to the shield axe puppet. This showed how tough these puppets were. At this time, Lung Shiqi quickly picked up a few arrows nearby. He raised his hand and shot the arrows at the archer puppet at the back. The arrows divided into 2 groups in midair and shot at the 2 archer puppets. With a few kacha sounds, the arrows accurately hit the archer puppets' eyes. Their heads immediately tilted and they stopped moving. However, at this moment, the remaining 8 archer puppets shot another round of arrows. This time, everyone was too tired to deal with the puppets and had no room to dodge. In an instant, 4 people were killed by the arrows. Fortunately, Lung Shiqi and the Yushu clan blocked a few arrows. Otherwise, even more people would have died. Lung Shiqi and Yushu looked at each other, and knew that they couldn't continue like this. They nodded in tacit understanding, and the 2 of them charged at the same shield axe puppet at the same time. Yushu gathered all his spirit force at the tip of his sword. His spirit transformation realm spirit force circulated at full force and instantly pierced through the shield of the shield axe puppet. Then he suddenly slashed downwards. With a ka sound, the shield was directly broken into 2. Lung Shiqi followed closely behind. He no longer hid, and a long spear appeared in his hand. He let out a roar and a hint of domineering aura appeared from his body. His body moved and the spear shot out like a dragon. An astonishing spiritual light erupted from the tip of the spear, and as it pierced forward, it suddenly transformed into a huge cross-shaped brilliance. This was the formation-breaking cross spear that Lung Shiqi had created by fusing the heavy cross spear and the formation-breaking cross spear. The formation-breaking cross spear carried a boundless aura as it rushed into the midst of the puppets, directly piercing towards the puppet whose shield had been split open by Yushu. With a loud pung, the shield axe puppet exploded with a loud bang. The formation-breaking cross spear didn't slow down, and continued to smash into the halberd-wielding puppet behind it. The halberd-wielding puppet's defense was far inferior to the shield axe puppet, so a large hole was created by the spear. Yushu followed up with another strike to completely destroy it. The 2 of them worked together to tear a hole in the puppet. At this moment, the puppets on the side also closed in, but they were all stopped by Hua Lingling and the others. Lung Shiqi didn't dare to delay any longer, and quickly rushed toward the archer puppet. Yushu went in another direction. The 8 archer puppets pulled back their bowstrings once, and Lung Shiqi flashed to the side of the puppet. With a gale slash, he chopped it into pieces. At the same time, he flicked his arm and threw the spear, destroying another puppet. On the other side, Yushu quickly dealt with an archer puppet. However, 5 arrows were still shot out. Now that there was no Leng Shiqi or the Yushu clan to block the arrows, 3 more people were killed in the blink of an eye. Although the other 2 arrows didn't hit their vitals, the 2 people were surrounded by many puppets and wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Leng Shiqi didn't dare to delay, and used his fastest speed to kill 3 archer puppets before the next arrow was shot. The rest were all killed by Yushu. At this moment, all 10 archer puppets were finally destroyed. With these archer puppets dead, the biggest threat was gone and the rest was much easier. Although the shield axe puppets and halberd-wielding puppets were troublesome, they were only troublesome and not dangerous. Then Leng Shiqi and Yushu joined the battle, and the battle gradually tilted in favor of the Yushu clan. In the end, after losing 2 more people, they finally destroyed all the puppets. Is it over? Yushu asked while panting. Don't let your guard down. Let's wait and see. Leng Shiqi looked around vigilantly and said. At this moment Mu-21 suddenly shouted, There, look over there. When everyone heard this, they turned their heads and saw that a dark tunnel had appeared on the wall not far away. Seeing this, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. However, at this moment, many cracks appeared on the ground without warning. They didn't even have time to breathe. Everyone immediately ran towards the tunnel with all their might. Unfortunately, due to the sudden appearance of the crack, there were still 4 people who accidentally fell into the crack. Not even their bones were left behind. Chapter 119. The people who ran into the dark tunnel were all panting with lingering fear. After defeating the puppets this time, they thought that they would have some time to recover, but they didn't expect the ground to split open so quickly, catching everyone off guard. Leng Shiqi looked around, and found that there were only 16 people left. Moreover, except for him and Yushu, everyone else was injured. In terms of danger, the second floor was not much more dangerous than the first floor, but the last crack in the ground was impossible to guard against. Feeling the ground under his feet begin to rise again, Leng Shiqi knew that they were going to the 3rd floor. He took advantage of this gap to swallow 2 pills to recover his spiritual energy. After entering the 3rd floor, the environment was similar to the 2nd floor. The only difference was that not only were there arrays engraved on the walls, but even the entire ground was engraved with arrays. Seeing this scene, everyone including Leng Shiqi's heart sank. This floor was probably even more terrifying than the 2nd floor. With heavy hearts, these people walked step by step into the 3rd floor. However, when they reached the center, they didn't see anything happening, nor was there any danger. Leng Shiqi frowned and looked around. He turned his head to say something to Yushu, but when he turned his head, he was stunned. There was no one behind him. The entire 3rd floor was empty, and he was the only one left. Leng Shiqi was shocked, but he immediately calmed down. He knew that the people around him could not disappear in an instant. Thinking about the arrays he saw before, he guessed that it was very likely an illusion. Leng Shiqi closed his eyes and a faint wave of spiritual energy spread out from between his eyebrows. The surrounding environment also changed slightly. The most obvious thing was that the patterns engraved on the walls and ground had disappeared. This meant that he was already in the middle of an array. Leng Shiqi. At this moment, a clear voice came from behind. Leng Shiqi quickly turned around and raised his eyebrows. His expression was a little unnatural as he said, Delta Origi? That's right, the person who appeared behind him was a Delta Origi, but Leng Shiqi could tell that this Delta Origi was fake at a glance. Although this Delta Origi was very similar to the real Delta Origi in terms of figure, appearance, and temperament, it was not an exaggeration to say that it was exactly the same. However, for some reason this Delta Origi did not look like a real person. This was just like a wax figure or a painting. No matter how lifelike it was or how similar the painting was, a fake was still a fake and could be seen at a glance. Leng Shiqi thought to himself, maybe it's because my spiritual power isn't weak, so I have some resistance to illusions. However, he immediately put on an anxious expression and said, Delta Origi, why are you here? Are you okay? Delta Origi smiled shyly and said, I'm fine. I'm just a little injured. Where are you injured? Let me see. Lung Shiqi's face showed a concerned expression as he quickly walked over. Just as Lung Shiqi was about to touch Delta Origi suddenly raised its hand. Its soft sword suddenly stabbed out dozens of silver snake-like sword shadows. However, Lung Shiqi was even faster. Before Delta Origi stabbed out, his figure changed into 9 phantoms. Each phantom stabbed out with a sword, and at the same time, it was mixed with invisible sword chi. In an instant, the sword light shot out in all directions, and the sword chi was everywhere. Whoosh! Lung Shiqi's figure had already appeared behind Delta Origi. Following that, 9 sword rays wrapped in sword chi mercilessly fell. Delta Origi's sword shadows also shattered a few of the sword rays, but more still stabbed into her body. Delta Origi was immediately covered in blood, and half knelt on the ground. Why are you treating me like this? Delta Origi asked sorrowfully. Lung Shiqi was unmoved. He coldly said, a fake is a fake. Ah! Delta Origi laughed sadly and said, a fake? Seeing this scene, Lung Shiqi's heart suddenly thumped. He had an ominous feeling. Gu-san stood up, and the strange thing was that the injuries on her body had all healed. She continued, that's right, I am indeed a fake. You saw through it a long time ago. This means that either you're very scheming, or your spiritual power is very strong. However, although I'm a fake, my heart is real. Lung Shiqi's expression gradually darkened. Delta Origi continued, I'm the manifestation of the obsession in your heart, including your memories and feelings for her. I can even feel her feelings. Why are you telling me this? Lung Shiqi frowned and asked. He could break this illusion at any time, and Delta Origi's words could not shake his mind. However, the feeling of being seen through was not a good feeling. Delta Origi revealed a strange smile and said, it's easy for you to break the illusion, but if you think this is just a small illusion, then you're wrong. We may meet again in the future. Let me ask you one last question. If I'm real, will you do the same to me? This sentence suddenly shocked Lung Shiqi, but in the next moment, Delta Origi in front of him disappeared on its own. The surrounding scene also scattered like a burned picture scroll. Lung Shiqi finally returned to the real world. He quickly turned his head, and saw that everyone else was standing straight in the same place. Their eyes were full of confusion. Obviously, they had all fallen into an illusion. And they were actually still at the place where they had just stepped into this place. It turns out that we've been in an illusion since the moment we entered here. Lung Shiqi murmured with lingering fear. Fortunately, his spiritual power was not weak, so he could break the illusion so easily. Otherwise, thinking of this, Lung Shiqi's heart suddenly tightened. Otherwise, what could he do? Could he really kill the Delta Origi? Thinking of the last sentence of Delta Origi, Lung Shiqi's eyes also showed a look of confusion. But Yushu, who was next to him, suddenly shivered, then sat on the ground and panted heavily. Such a big movement pulled Lung Shiqi's thoughts back. Seeing that Yushu also broke the illusion so quickly, Lung Shiqi was a little surprised. He reached out to help Yushu up. Yushu subconsciously held his hand, but when he looked up and saw that it was Lung Shiqi, he immediately let go. He sat on the ground and quickly moved back. His speed was so fast that it made people speechless. Yushu looked around with a pale face. When he realized that he could see the others, he muttered to himself, oh my god, I'm finally out. That was terrifying. Seeing Yushu's reaction, Lung Shiqi's mind turned. He seemed to have guessed something. He walked step by step towards Yushu, narrowed his eyes and asked, what did you encounter in the illusion? Chapter 120. Lung Shiqi was wearing a large cloak and a dark force mask. He looked down at Yushu, and a shadow covered him. He asked coldly, what did you encounter in the illusion? Yushu wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and laughed dryly. Nothing. Then tell me how you got out of the illusion. Lung Shiqi stopped joking and asked seriously. Seeing Lung Shiqi like this, Yushu finally let out a sigh of relief. He thought for a bit and said, Actually, I'm not very sure. At first, I thought you were really going to. Yushu's expression became a bit unnatural, but Leng Shiqi signaled him to continue. Cough, I thought you were really going to kill me, so we fought. Dark Crow bro, you were too strong. I couldn't take it at all. Then you suddenly used the half-moon sword glint. I thought I was going to be killed, but I didn't expect the half-moon sword glint to hit himself. Then I came out. Hearing this, Leng Shiqi nodded thoughtfully. If what the Delta Origi said was true, then the Leng Shiqi Yushu encountered in the illusion had the memories of Leng Shiqi in his mind. However, the half-moon rapid light slash was a move that Leng Shiqi had fused 3 spiritual skills together. It was an ultimate move that he had comprehended when he was at his limit. It wasn't something that could be used with just a bit of memory. So it was possible that the Leng Shiqi in Yushu's illusion was counterattacked by this move. But Leng Shiqi didn't know whether to laugh or cry at how Yushu escaped the illusion. Yushu looked at the others standing there in a daze. He sighed and said, I didn't expect this level to be an illusion. I don't know how many people can wake up. He wanted to help others, but he himself had somehow gotten rid of the illusion. He had no idea how to do so, so he could only helplessly help. Although Leng Shiqi's spiritual power wasn't weak, it was his first time coming into contact with something like an illusion. He couldn't think of any good ideas for the time being, and felt a little helpless. He could only helplessly say, they can only rely on themselves. Just as he finished speaking, another 2 people broke free from the illusion and slumped to the ground. He turned his head and saw that it was Mu-21 and blood is no different. At this time the 2 of them were soaked in cold sweat. Leng Shiqi and Yushu hurried forward to help them up and asked. However, they never expected that the person they met in the illusion was actually Leng Shiqi as well. And the results were similar to Yushu's. Leng Shiqi inexplicably committed suicide in the end. Yushu finally felt better at this time. He thought to himself, so I'm not the only one who was traumatized by Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi really didn't know what to say. He could only recover his spiritual power, while thinking of ways to help others get rid of the illusion. At the same time, he waited for others to wake up. Gradually, a few people broke free from the illusion, but the ground began to crack and collapse again. The speed of the collapse wasn't fast, but there wasn't much time left for them. Leng Shiqi recovered his spiritual power and opened his eyes. He saw Yushu anxiously looking around and glancing at someone from time to time. That person was Hua Lingling. She was still immersed in the illusion. Seeing that there were more and more cracks on the ground, Yushu became more and more anxious. Leng Shiqi also thought of an immature idea in the process of recovering his spiritual power, so he said to Yushu, I have a method that might be able to try, but I've never done it before, so the hope is not great. If we're not careful, it might even cause Hua Lingling to have a mental breakdown and die. Yushu's face showed some hesitation. Hua Lingling joined him when he first established the Yushu clan. She had been with him for the longest time. And after she broke through to the pure spirit realm, many things in the clan were taken care of by her. It could be said that she had helped Yushu a lot inside and outside. There was both merit and hard work. Yushu really couldn't bear to watch Hua Lingling die here. Even if there was only a glimmer of hope, he wanted to grasp it. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, Let's try it. Leng Shiqi nodded and walked to Hua Lingling. Then he opened his eyes slightly, and an invisible mental power spread out from between his eyebrows and poured into Hua Lingling's forehead. He was planning to use his mental power to directly attack Hua Lingling's spiritual world. When Hua Lingling was trapped in the illusion, such a violent method was indeed likely to cause her to have a mental breakdown, but this was the only way, because there was almost no time. Hua Lingling let out a muffled groan as a painful expression appeared on her face. Beads of sweat appeared on her cheeks. At this time, blood is no different and the others had already run into the black passage. He hurriedly shouted, Hurry up, this place is going to collapse soon. Seeing that Hua Lingling was still unconscious, Leng Shiqi sighed inwardly and turned to enter the black passage. But at this moment, Hua Lingling suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and opened her eyes. However, her eyes were unfocused and lifeless. Yushu was quick to react. He hurriedly hugged Hua Lingling, who was about to fall, and quickly ran into the black passage. When the three of them entered, the space on the third floor completely collapsed. Yushu said gratefully, "Brother Dark Crow, thank you." Leng Shiqi's gaze drifted back and forth between Yushu and Hualingling, revealing a meaningful look. Yushu's face turned red. He coughed dryly and changed the topic. "How many people are left?" Mu Shiqing, "Blood is no different," and the others opened their mouths but still did not speak. Yushu turned around. He did not need to count. He could tell at a glance that including himself, there were only 9 people left. 9 people. There were only a single digit left. The illusory array on the third floor took away the lives of 7 people, without shedding a single drop of blood. What was even more terrifying was that there were still 2 more floors below. Could the 9 of them make it through? Even Leng Shiqi could not help but feel a little nervous. However, he was still confident because so far, at least they had not encountered any life-threatening danger. Not long after, the 9 of them finally arrived at the 4th floor. The space on the 4th floor seemed to be smaller than the 3rd floor. What was different was that there were 4 floating stone platforms in the center of the 4th floor. The stone platforms were not big, and could only accommodate 1 person standing on them. Leng Shiqi and the others stepped into the 4th floor. They were all cautious and vigilant, but after a while, there was still no danger. Could it be another illusory array? Blood is no different, asked, puzzled. Yushu walked to the 4 stone platforms with a thoughtful look. He said, "It's not an illusory array. The test on this floor might be related to these 4 stone platforms." Leng Shiqi looked at the 4 stone platforms and had some guesses. He said, "That's right. If I'm not wrong, only 4 people can pass this floor." Chapter 121. After Leng Shiqi finished speaking, everyone looked at the 4 stone platforms with eager gazes. Perhaps to prove that Leng Shiqi was right, the stone platforms suddenly released a ray of light, and then disappeared. Immediately after, the stone platforms began to slowly rise. Although the rise was very slow, it would only take another incense stick of time for it to rise to a height they couldn't reach even if they jumped. This meant that the 9 people present would have to kill each other to compete for the 4 spots. And they didn't have much time. They were all very smart people and quickly understood the meaning behind this. They looked at each other in dismay. They had fought side by side for a long time, and now they were about to kill each other. This was a bit difficult for them to accept. However, in the face of the great terror of life and death, no one would choose death. Their gazes gradually changed. They no longer trusted or cared for him. Instead, cold killing intent slowly emerged. At this moment, Leng Shiqi moved and stood on a stone platform in the blink of an eye. He slowly pulled out his blade and his aura continued to rise, giving off bursts of powerful aura. Spirit transformation realm. The expressions of the others changed. They originally thought that this vice leader was only at the peak of the pure spirit realm, and still had a trace of fantasy in their hearts. However, at this moment they completely destroyed this fantasy. They were not a match for Dark Crow. Yushu's expression was very calm. When Leng Shiqi attacked on the 1st floor, he had noticed Leng Shiqi's cultivation, so he wasn't surprised. Moreover, Yushu could also guess that the reason why Leng Shiqi revealed his cultivation at this moment was because he didn't want to fight with everyone, and let them back off. Then Yushu also circulated his spirit force, and erupted with the spirit pressure of the spirit transformation realm. No one dared to stop him. Standing on the stone platform, Yushu looked at everyone. When he saw the hidden killing intent in their eyes, Yushu's heart turned cold. But when he saw Hualingling, his heart softened again. At this time, Hualingling had just regained her consciousness and was still a little weak. She definitely could not exert her full strength. If she were to fight with someone else, her chances of survival would be slim. As if she had seen through Yushu's thoughts, Hualingling smiled gently and said, "Let me fight. No matter what the outcome is, I have no regrets." Yushu didn't say anything. Instead, he slowly closed his eyes. He didn't want to see his own people killing each other. This was like a signal, and soon after, the 7 of them began to fight. Leng Shiqi, on the other hand, had been watching their battles. Among the 7 of them, He was undoubtedly most optimistic about Mu-21. Blood is no different and Hua Lingling. This was because their cultivation was at the late stage of the pure spirit realm, while the other four were only at the middle stage of the pure spirit realm. Although Hua Lingling's condition was not good, she had followed Yushu for the longest time, and was also in charge of the upper echelons of the Yushu clan. It was impossible to say that she did not have any trump cards in her hands. Time slowly passed, and at this time, Lung Shiqi and Yushu were already a person's height away from the ground. The battle below was no different from what Lung Shiqi had expected. The four spirit cultivators at the middle stage of the pure spirit realm were the first to die. There were only Hua Lingling Mu-21, and Blood is no different left. However, there were only two positions. From Lung Shiqi's point of view, he naturally hoped that Mu-21 and Blood is no different would win. These two people were more or less related to him. In his opinion, Mu-21 and Blood is no different could join forces to besiege Hua Lingling. This way, they would all be able to obtain the qualifications to enter the next level. But from Yushu's point of view, it was best for the three of them to fight on their own. The result was exactly not what Lung Shiqi had expected. The three of them were now fighting on their own. Hua Lingling swung her sword to deflect Blood is no different spear, but Mu-21's attack had also arrived. When Mu-21 touched Hua Lingling, his hands strangely wrapped around Hua Lingling's arm. It was the vine entanglement technique. At this time, Hua Lingling was already somewhat exhausted. A few traces of ruthlessness flashed past her eyes. She abandoned the sword in her right hand, and a chess piece slipped out from her sleeve. She suddenly flicked it, and the chess piece suddenly shot towards Mu-21. Mu-21's expression changed drastically and he hurriedly retreated, but the distance between the two of them was too close. After the chess piece shot out, it grew in the wind and turned into a huge chess piece with the word suppress engraved on it. Mu-21 could not dodge in time, and was heavily pressed to the ground by the chess piece. The sound of bones cracking could be heard. Then the chess piece suddenly disappeared. Mu-21 was lying on the ground covered in blood. His eyes were staring blankly at the top. He was barely breathing. There was not much time left. Go, Mu-21 said weakly, his tone very calm. Hua Lingling turned her head away, and did not look at him. She muttered, "Don't blame me. Haha, to be able to live until now. I'm already very satisfied," Mu-21 said intermittently. Then Hua Lingling and Blood is no different looked at each other, and leaped onto the last two stone platforms together. The stone platforms continued to rise as huge cracks began to appear on the ground. Mu-21's gaze finally landed on Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi also lowered his head to look at him. Just as Mu-21's vitality was about to dissipate, Lung Shiqi took off his mask and threw it down. "Then I'll let Raven accompany you." At this point, only 4 of the 46 people who had entered the blood-colored tower were left. The 4 people on the stone platforms all had heavy hearts. None of them spoke. Soon, the stone platforms rose into another space. This was a very small room. It was completely bare inside. There was nothing but a stone door in front of them. Lung Shiqi and the other 3 walked down the stone platforms and carefully inspected the place. When they did not find any traps, he said, "You guys recover your spiritual power first. I'll protect you guys." Yushu and the other 2 did not stand on ceremony. They found a corner and sat down cross-legged to circulate their qi. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lung Shiqi used the breath-concealing technique to conceal his cultivation level. He only revealed that he was at the 9th level of the pure spirit realm. Yushu did not consume much spiritual power, so he finished very quickly. However, Hua Lingling and Blood is no different had just experienced a great battle. Especially when Hua Lingling was still injured, she would need a long time to recover. However, they did not have that much time. About half an hour later, the stone door of the room suddenly opened by itself. An inexplicable force pushed them out. Then, the stone door closed by itself. Lung Shiqi looked left and right. The scene in front of them was similar to the previous floors. However, there were also 3 stone doors on the walls in the other 3 directions. Then, the 3 stone doors opened one after another, and more than 10 people emerged from them. Upon closer inspection, they were people from Blood Moon, Seiji, and the Qingyan League. After they came out, they also looked around and found people from other forces. Lung Shiqi first looked at Blood Moon. As expected, Delta Origi and Ah-chun were there. There were also 2 spirit cultivators at the late stage of the pure spirit realm. At the same time, Delta Origi also looked over. Their eyes met in the air, and then they silently looked away. The people from the other 2 forces were Xiongming, Extreme Evil, Qingyan, and Yan Feilin. Xiongming's cultivation level was already at the spirit transformation realm. However, when Qingyan saw that Dark Crow from the Yushu clan was not there, she felt a burst of joy. Then she had other thoughts. Chapter 122. 16 people from 4 different factions were gathered here. After they looked at each other, Ji Sha was the first to speak. He said to Qingyan in a strange tone, "Luckily, we didn't agree to work with someone. Otherwise, we wouldn't be standing here with just 16 people." Qingyan looked at Extreme Evil with displeasure, but she didn't flare up. Instead, she spoke to Yushu. "Leader Yu, I remember that you have someone called Dark Crow. He's very strong. Why don't I see him?" Lung Shiqi had already taken off his mask, revealing his true face. But now, only Yushu's group and Delta Origi had seen Lung Shiqi's true face. Everyone else who had seen him was dead. Therefore, no one knew that he was actually Dark Crow. Yushu chuckled in his heart, but he deliberately put on an ugly expression and said in an unfriendly tone, "Qingyan League leader, you should mind your own business." Just as Qingyan was about to say something, a huge spiritual formation suddenly appeared on the ground. The spiritual formation shone with a dense blood-red light, and a huge figure gradually rose from the ground. Qingyan and the others all closed their mouths and stared at the figure. It was a strange demon beast that was more than 10 feet tall. It was strange because its upper body was that of a bull, and its thick arms carried 2 pitch-black pitchforks. However, its lower body was that of a long snake. The intersection of the 2 bodies seemed to be sewn together by red silk threads, and a faint blood-red light could be seen coming out. There were also 8 chains in the spiritual formation that tightly bound the demon beast. It kept struggling and roaring, but the chains didn't move at all. Lung Shiqi silently drew his spiritual sword, and was on full alert. Everyone else was the same. They could all guess that this might be the last test. Demonic beasts that could be used as the final test were definitely not easy to deal with. After the demonic beasts in the spiritual array appeared, the 8 Vajra chains suddenly retracted, and the spiritual array disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. The moment the chains and the spiritual array disappeared, the demonic beast roared towards the sky, and a ferocious sound wave reverberated outwards. Everyone covered their ears in pain. What was even more terrifying was that a powerful and terrifying aura was being emitted from the demonic beast's body. It was an aura that was enough to make everyone despair. That aura pressed down on everyone's body, causing everyone's face to turn pale. This was definitely not a rank 2 monster beast. Behind the Delta Origi, Ah-chun shouted in horror, Is this a rank 3 monster?" Although the others didn't say anything, they all had the same thought in their minds. Originally, they thought that they had already paid enough attention to this demonic beast, but unexpectedly, this demonic beast's strength had far exceeded their expectations. Would they be able to pass the final test? Among this group of people, only Lung Shiqi knew that this demonic beast wasn't a rank 3 monster. This was because when he accidentally entered the underground space for the first time, he accidentally heard the conversation between Meng Wanshan and Zhuo Laogui. He knew that the Blood Mist Island didn't seem to be able to contain a rank 3 monster, and this strange demonic beast in front of them should be the blood fusion beast that Zhuo Laogui spoke of. Lung Shiqi whispered to Yushu, "This is a blood fusion beast. Its strength is comparable to a rank 3 monster, but it's not very stable. While the demonic beast is not ready to attack, we should take the initiative and attack its stitches." Yushu didn't know how Lung Shiqi obtained this information, but he didn't have any suspicions and didn't ask any questions. He shouted, "Everyone! At this final step, I don't think anyone is willing to die here. Don't hide anymore, We should take the initiative and attack the stitches with all our strength. The people from the other three forces weren't stupid. They knew that only by working together would they have a chance of survival. When Yushu's voice fell, they all nodded solemnly. Lung Shiqi's spirit power revolved, and his left hand lit up with starlight. Then he quickly formed a dozen spirit seals. A circular spirit formation suddenly appeared in front of him, and a large amount of cold air gathered in the spirit formation. In the blink of an eye, the cold air condensed into a 3-meter-long ice sword. Lung Shiqi pushed his hands forward, and the ice sword suddenly flew out. This was Lung Shiqi's fusion of Spirit Attack and Frost Sword Chi. Spirit Attack, Ice Giant Sword. Yushu didn't pay much attention to Lung Shiqi's movements. He threw out a chess piece. This chess piece was very similar to the one that Hua Lingling used before, but the word seal was written on it. However, when the others saw Lung Shiqi make such a giant ice sword, their expressions were different, but they were all shocked. They didn't expect this person to be a spirit caster. But how come they had never seen or heard of him before? Of course, they didn't have the time to think about this now. Most of them took out different but powerful things. These were basically their trump cards, but they didn't hesitate to use them at this time. However, they didn't expect these things to be able to kill the monster. They just wanted to weaken it as much as possible before the real battle. Lung Shiqi's Frost Greatsword was the first to pierce through the seams of the fused blood beast. However, to everyone's surprise, the Frost Greatsword was only able to pierce through a little before it was unable to penetrate any further. Lung Shiqi narrowed his eyes and the spirit seal in his hand changed. The giant ice sword turned into a large amount of cold air and covered the upper body of the blood beast. In the blink of an eye, a layer of ice crystals formed. At the same time, Yushu's chess piece smashed down, and at the same time, 7 strange things flew over. In an instant, all kinds of fire, thunder, and wind blades whistled and smashed into the stitches of the blood beast's abdomen, causing the entire space to be filled with rolling waves of spiritual power. Everyone stared at the blood beast. Lung Shiqi pulled the hood on his head and quietly opened his supercilious eyes. Through his supercilious eyes, he could see that the spiritual power in the blood beast's body had indeed weakened, and was a little unstable. When the light dissipated, the blood beast's body was revealed. There was a small hole on its head, which should have been hit by Yushu's chess piece. There were several different kinds of wounds on its abdomen, but none of them were deep. Everyone's attacks did hurt it, but it was only a light injury. The merged blood beast had just escaped from the trap, and before it could start a massacre, it was beaten to a pulp. It waved its arms furiously, and threw the pair of pitchforks at the people from the Netherworld office. Meng Ming, Extreme Evil, and the others instantly scattered and retreated. However, one of them was still a step too slow due to the terrifying aura of the blood beast, and was instantly pierced through by the pitchforks. He couldn't be any more dead. Everyone was shocked when they saw this scene. That person was at the 8th level of the pure spirit realm, but he couldn't even withstand a single attack. Chapter 123. The power of the merged blood beast exceeded everyone's expectations, but at this point, there was no turning back. The only thing left for them was to fight to the death. After the merged blood beast killed one person, the first to make a move was Xiong Ming, who was closest to it. Xiong Ming held 2 strange purple scimitars in his hands. After injecting his spiritual power into them, purple patterns appeared on the scimitars, releasing beams of mesmerizing purple light. Xiong Ming had also cultivated movement techniques. His body moved, and 2 thin purple beams of light flashed through the air, slashing at the merged blood beast's snake tail. Delta Orgi was 1 step behind him. She held an azure longsword, and judging from its quality, it was also a 3rd-stage spirit sword. She used her bewildering footwork technique, and with a swing of her longsword, hundreds of azure sword lights instantly engulfed the merged blood beast. Yushu, Qingyan, and the others also followed in a timely manner. In the instant that Xiong Ming's dual blades slashed down, the merged blood beast twisted its body in an attempt to evade. However, right at this moment, 6 earthen pillars as thick as an arm suddenly erupted from the ground, trapping the merged blood beast in place. The one who made this move was none other than Lung Shiqi. Now that he was a step closer to developing the Hand of the Earth, and with the breakthrough in his cultivation, it was no problem for him to summon 6 earthen pillars in an instant. Even though the 6 earthen pillars were shattered by the merged blood beast in the blink of an eye, everyone's attacks had already arrived in that short period of time. Xiongming's dual blades slashed out, leaving 2 deep gashes on the merged blood beast's snake tail. The merged blood beast's arms suddenly turned, and it raised its 2 pitchforks, but they were blocked by Delta Origi's countless sword lights. Immediately afterward, Yushu's saber lights, Qingyan's fists, and everyone else's attacks also landed on the merged blood beast's body. More than a dozen powerful attacks left wounds all over the merged blood beast's snake body. Among them, Xiongming, Yushu, and Qingyan were the ones who left the most severe wounds. At this moment, a bang was heard. The fused blood beast had crushed all the sword lights and sent Delta Origi flying. However, it did not have enough strength left. She continued to dissipate the force of the attack in midair, and finally landed lightly on the ground. Obviously, she was not injured at all. Then the fused blood beast swung its tail, trying to fling all the ants away. However, at this moment, a thick earthen wall rose from the ground and helped everyone to slow down. Taking advantage of this gap, everyone retreated. Unfortunately, one of them was still sent flying by the snake's tail, and crashed into the wall in the distance. Moreover, his entire body sank into the wall. Viscous blood could be seen flowing out from the wound. The power of the fused blood beast's tail was so strong. The eyes of the fused blood beast burst out with 2 bloody rays. It looked around with a ferocious expression, and its gaze finally locked onto the Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi suddenly felt an invisible pressure pressing down on his heart, making him a little breathless. However, he did not panic at all. He raised his arms and erected 3 thick earthen walls in front of him. Then a layer of black mist rose from under his feet, and he quickly dodged. Almost at the same time, the fused blood beast twisted its huge body and charged onto the earthen walls in a few seconds. The 3 earthen walls crumbled like paper, but Lung Shiqi had already dodged out of the way. After Lung Shiqi stood still, he did not stay idle. His left hand flashed, and a large amount of cold air condensed before him to form a giant ice sword. He pushed with both hands and the giant ice sword flew out, stabbing into the wound caused by Xiongming's attack. This time, the giant ice sword pierced 1/3 of the way in. At the same time, extremely cold air and a few rays of sword energy burst out and mercilessly eroded the flesh of the fused blood beast's tail. Even so, the fused blood beast did not care about the injury to its tail and immediately charged at Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi could not help but curse. He had hidden his strength before so that he would not be noticed by the fused blood beast, but he was still targeted. He did not know why his hatred was so great. If this continued, he would have to reveal his strength. Unexpectedly, just as the fused blood beast charged over, a person suddenly appeared next to it. It was Delta Origi. But now Gu-san was a bit unimaginable. Her black hair had turned white, and her face had become abnormally pale, but the aura on her body had become a bit stronger. Delta Origi's green sword shot out streaks of sharp light. The green sword successfully pierced the fused blood beast's flesh, but it could not stop its advance. Delta Origi had an idea. She grabbed the hilt of her sword and poured spirit force into her legs to stop the fused blood beast. The fused blood beast did not slow down in the slightest. Instead, a long sword mark appeared on its body. Lung Shiqi held the sword in his right hand, and his left hand clenched into a fist. He was ready to attack at any moment. After Gu-san made his move, Lung Shiqi was surprised to see that Meng Ming also made his move. He swung his arms, and 2 streaks of purple light pierced through the air, piercing into the back of the blood beast. At the same time, Yushu also arrived. He jumped high into the air, and slashed down with a giant blade energy. The 3 spirit transformation realm cultivators finally managed to hinder the fused blood beast a bit. Seeing this, Lung Shiqi quickly used the ghost parade and confusion movement technique to escape. Boom! The fused blood beast's 2 pitchforks smashed into the ground, creating a deep hole. Lung Shiqi's eyes were filled with intelligence. He pointed with his spirit sword and turned into 9 afterimages that stabbed out at the same time. The 9 afterimages formed a circle, and each sword carried a light blue sword energy as they stabbed into the fused blood beast's lower abdomen. Puff, puff, puff. 9 small sword marks appeared on the fused blood beast's body, and 9 waves of cold energy invaded it. This was the chaotic flower dazzling eyes that had fused with the cold sword energy. The cold energy entered the fused blood beast's body and caused it to stiffen for a moment. Ah-chun hesitated for a moment, but he immediately took out a brown cylinder. He opened it and pressed the mechanism at the end. Immediately, a black object shot into the air and landed on top of the blood beast's head. Following that, 10 sharp black short arrows suddenly shot down. However, those short arrows were not aimed at the blood beast, but at the ground around it. The black mass in the air instantly expanded and turned into a large black net that slid down, trapping the fusion blood fiend within. The fused blood beast immediately waved its arms and twisted its snake tail, but it didn't know what material the black net was made of. It was abnormally tough and didn't break. Chance. This thought appeared in everyone's mind. They all rushed forward and used their most powerful spirit techniques. Qing Yan, who hadn't made a move yet, suddenly made her fists bigger. Then her fists became extremely red like iron that had been burned for a long time. At the same time, Lung Shiqi clenched his fists and smashed them out like a tiger stepping on the waves. Chapter 124. Lung Shiqi's ferocious tiger treading wave fist slammed into the fusion blood beast's abdomen. The yin and yang fists blasted out and finally tore a hole. Especially the internal strength that was constantly stirring its meridians and flesh. The fusion blood beast trembled in pain. At this time in Lung Shiqi's vision, the fusion blood beast's spiritual energy was rapidly gathering at its head, condensing into a ball. At this moment, Lung Shiqi's mind flashed as if he had thought of something. At the same time, the attacks of the others fell. The fusion blood beast's injuries increased, especially the snake tail that was almost broken. The fusion blood beast suddenly burst out a bloody wave from its body. The 2 tridents were surrounded by a bloody light. With a chi-la sound, the black net that bound it was instantly cut into pieces. The fused blood beast waved its arms and slapped away the people who couldn't react in time. Immediately, several people died on the spot. Then, the fusion blood beast raised its body high and a large hole opened at the back of its neck. Then, a huge snake head emerged from it. The snake had opened its bloody mouth and sprayed out a large amount of green mucus. The green mucus emitted a disgusting stench, but no one cared about it. Because anyone who was sprayed by the green mucus was instantly corroded into bones. In addition, there were a few people who were only grazed a little, and had small holes corroded into their bodies. What was even more frightening was that a lot of the green mucus splashed on the ground, seriously hindering their movements. Lung Shiqi suddenly shouted at this time. This snake head is its weakness. He did not care about other people's suspicions. A longbow and several arrows suddenly appeared in his hand. He quickly knocked the bow and several sharp arrows wrapped in rich spiritual energy shot directly at the snake head. The fusion blood beast seemed to feel the threat and turned its body to block the snake head behind it. However, Lung Shiqi's arrow made a sharp turn in the air and accurately hit the snake's head. Boom hiss. The 2 heads that had fused with the blood beast let out miserable shrieks at the same time. At the same time, they kept twisting their bodies, making it impossible for anyone to get close. The fork-in ox head's hand suddenly changed direction and smashed towards Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi was too close to the fused blood beast. This sudden attack caught him off guard. Even if he used Ghost Parade and Confusion footwork, he could not completely dodge it. At this critical moment, Lung Shiqi retreated and shouted in a low voice. Then his whole body showed a silvery white color, and his momentum rose by a notch. Lung Shiqi instantly activated the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's beast essence battle pattern. In his mind he had the flowing ink cloak on the outside and the beast chi battle pattern on the inside. In addition, his body was not weak. Even if he was hit, he would not be seriously injured. But he was wrong. It wasn't that he had misjudged the attack power of the fused blood fiend, but that he had misjudged someone. That was, blood is no different. Just as the fork was about to fall, blood is no different suddenly appeared in front of Lung Shiqi. Blood is no different raised the spear in his hand. He did not stab out but swept it out like a stick. However, his attack was nothing in front of the fused blood fiend. The spear was split in half in an instant. The fork pierced through blood is no different's body. With blood is no different blocking, Lung Shiqi also retreated. But at this time his eyes were wide open and a somewhat complicated expression appeared on his face. He never thought that blood is no different would use his own life to block an attack for him. Blood is no different. Lung Shiqi shouted these 3 words in an indescribable tone. His voice contained doubt, confusion, anger, and regret. Blood is no different smiled softly and said intermittently, "You spared my life, I will repay you with my life, it's only right of course. Only right." Hearing these words, Lung Shiqi's mind instantly returned to the scene when he attacked Bailey Qing. Blood is no different had risked his life to stop him. At that time, Lung Shiqi had asked him why he risked his life to protect Bailey Qing. Blood is no different said, "He saved my life, it's only right that I repay him with my life." Lung Shiqi still remembered clearly the stubborn and proud expression on Blood is no different's face. At that time, Lung Shiqi didn't kill him not because he was soft-hearted, but because he felt a trace of admiration in his heart. On this Blood Fog Island, there were very few people who could still uphold their pride and their beliefs. Lung Shiqi admitted that he couldn't do this. At that time, Lung Shiqi even felt a bit of jealousy. He was jealous that someone was willing to die for Bailey Qing. But now, there was someone who was willing to die for him. That person was Blood is no different. Ha. Lung Shiqi suddenly laughed. Only right, what a good only right. He laughed, but his laughter was full of regret and annoyance. At this moment, Lung Shiqi regretted hiding his strength for the first time. If he had revealed his full strength from the beginning, Blood is no different would know that the blood beast fusion couldn't kill him. Blood is no different naturally wouldn't have sacrificed himself to save him. If Blood is no different had died at the hands of the blood beast fusion, or even at the hands of others, Lung Shiqi might have only felt pity. However, Blood is no different had died for him, and in vain. Bang bang. At this moment, the blood beast fusion unleashed its might, and the people around it were either killed or crippled. Delta Origi was bathed in blood, and Yushu collapsed to the ground. Lung Shiqi's pupils dilated. He had never felt such regret in his 2 lives. He always thought that he was a heartless person, and always tried to suppress his emotions. In fact, in his heart, he had long regarded Blood as no different as a friend, Yushu as a brother, and Delta Origi as a confidant. However, he never dared to admit it. He was afraid that once he had feelings, he would be indecisive. He suddenly felt that he was even more ridiculous, and it was ridiculous that he had comforted Yushu. It turned out that he was an extremely ridiculous, heartless lover. Badump badump. At this moment, Lung Shiqi could clearly hear his own heartbeat, and he knew his own heart. Lung Shiqi took 1 step forward, 2 steps, 3 steps. With every step he took, his figure grew taller and bigger. Every time he took a step, his muscles would bulge up a little. With every step he took, his aura increased by a notch. Roar. Finally, Lung Shiqi opened his mouth and let out a beast-like roar. At this moment, he was already as tall as an adult, and his muscles bulged. The outer layer of his white robe was torn to shreds, and his eyes were faintly flickering with blood. At this moment, Lung Shiqi actually activated the spiritual ruin beast king, and the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile at the same time. The rest of the people looked at Lung Shiqi in shock. Lung Shiqi's strength was far beyond their imagination. Chapter 125. Lung Shiqi, who had activated 2 beast origin battle runes, suddenly jumped out and smashed toward the fusion blood beast like a cannonball. The fusion blood beast waved its arm and swatted Lung Shiqi away, like it was swatting a fly. With a bang, Lung Shiqi smashed into the wall above him. However, he was not injured at all and did not fall down. Instead, he used his chakra movement technique to stand upside down on the wall. His eyes were filled with boundless killing intent. Lung Shiqi found an opportunity and raised his spear. His body was filled with a domineering aura, and he stabbed down. The spear shook rapidly in the air, and drew a huge bloody cross in the air. It crashed down with a terrifying amount of spirit force. The fusion blood beast felt the danger from above and raised its head. At the same time, it swung its two pitchforks to meet the attack. When the spear and pitchforks collided, a terrifying shockwave suddenly exploded. Huge amounts of spirit force spread out and forced everyone to retreat. With a kacha sound, Lung Shiqi's long spear was the first to break apart. Fortunately, the cross spear managed to block the fusion blood beast's attack. Lung Shiqi used the force to quickly change direction in the air, and landed on the back of the fusion blood beast. Following closely behind was a magnificent saber light that resembled a crescent moon. It was the half-moon light slash. And it was the half-moon light slash that Lung Shiqi used with all his strength. Meng Ming, Qing Yan, and the others immediately recognized that this was a powerful sword technique that only the Dark Crow knew. It turned out that Lung Shiqi was the Dark Crow. Qing Yan's face suddenly became pale, and he felt a lingering fear in his heart. He remembered that when he gathered everyone to discuss the alliance, he had attacked Lung Shiqi. If Lung Shiqi had erupted with this level of combat power, even if he was at the spirit transformation realm, he wouldn't have been able to last more than a few moves. Lung Shiqi's half-moon light slash was aimed at the snake's head, but unexpectedly, the snake's head retreated back into its body. Lung Shiqi had no choice but to change his target at the last moment, and the blade slashed at the back of the blood beast's neck. Rip! The magnificent saber light tore open a deep wound on the neck of the fused blood beast, revealing half of its snake head. At this moment, the snake had opened its bloody mouth and spat out a stream of green mucus. It was too late for Lung Shiqi to dodge. Instead, he raised his sword to protect his heart. The 5 fingers of his other hand clenched into a fist. Instantly, an incomparably turbulent fist force smashed down brazenly like a ferocious tiger breaking the waves. At the same time, the snake had spat out green mucus onto Lung Shiqi's body. The mucus sprayed on his spirit saber and made a chi-chi sound. In a few breaths of time, a large hole appeared on the spirit saber, and the green mucus adhered to the flowing ink robe. The flowing ink robe immediately lit up, but in the end, it was unable to block the green mucus. In the end, the green mucus made contact with Lung Shiqi's body. However, at this moment, Lung Shiqi's body was covered in silver scales. The scales were extremely hard and resisted the green mucus. However, because the silver scales were actually Lung Shiqi's skin, the searing pain still spread throughout his body. Lung Shiqi didn't make a sound and smashed down with the fierce tiger wave-stomping fist. There was a poochie sound and the snake head was instantly shattered by the fist's force. The fused blood beast's body suddenly twitched as if it was spasming. The others were still shocked by Lung Shiqi's terrifying strength, but now that there was a chance, they all attacked once more. After Lung Shiqi shattered the snake's head, he saw a fist-sized blood-red bead under the snake's head. He had a flash of inspiration. He guessed that this was the bloodly bead that Zhuo Laogui had mentioned. This was the core of the fused blood beast. Lung Shiqi's eyes were filled with endless ferocity. He took out a purple-blue bead from the system space, and stuffed it into the fused blood beast's wound. That was the righteous thunder bead. It was comparable to the full power of a mid-stage spirit transformation realm cultivator, and was the bane of evil things like the fused blood beast. After throwing out the righteous thunder bead, Lung Shiqi quickly jumped off the fused blood beast's body. Immediately after, there was a rumbling sound, as if there was thunder. The sound of thunder came from the fused blood beast's body. Then more and more thunder rumbled. Bolts of purple lightning shot out, and covered the fused blood beast's body. The purple lightning seemed to have a great restraining effect on the fused blood beast. The fused blood beast couldn't move and black smoke kept coming out of its body. Its bloody mouth was wide open but it couldn't make any sound. Its flesh and blood had been almost completely destroyed by the righteous thunder bead. When Lung Shiqi saw this, he felt a bit of joy in his heart. However, he suddenly noticed something strange with his white eyes. The fused blood beast's spirit force and blood began to boil. The The fused blood beast's body also began to swell a bit. Leng Shiqi knew that something was wrong and immediately shouted, "Retreat! It might self-destruct." The moment he finished speaking, everyone else immediately retreated. Yushu protected Hua Lingling and said to Leng Shiqi, "Brother Leng, come here." When Leng Shiqi saw Yushu take off a jade pendant from his waist, he immediately flashed to Yushu's side. Yushu smashed the jade pendant in his hand. Then the jade pendant surged with spirit force and spun continuously. In an instant, it turned into a circular shield. There were strange runes on the shield. Leng Shiqi was still a bit worried behind the shield. Immediately, his spirit force surged out and he raised his arms. 5 thick earth walls rose in front of him. Right after Leng Shiqi raised the earthen wall, countless rays of blood-red light shot out from the blood-fused beast, and then its entire body exploded. Boom, boom, boom. Deafening explosions continued to sound. Waves of terrifying shockwaves mixed with the remains of the fused blood beast swept out. Leng Shiqi's 5 earth walls only lasted for 3 breaths of time before they all shattered. In the end, the shockwaves crashed into Yushu's spirit shield, causing the spirit shield to suddenly distort. In the blink of an eye, a few cracks appeared on the spirit shield. Leng Shiqi saw that the spirit shield was about to collapse. His left hand flashed and quickly gathered a large amount of cold air. After the cold air surged out, it didn't condense into a sword. Instead, it turned into an ice wall. Waves of shockwaves mixed with the remains of the fused blood beast continued to rush over. Yushu's spirit shield finally couldn't hold on, and shattered into specks of spirit force. Fortunately, the shockwaves of the shockwaves weren't too big. Leng Shiqi's ice wall was finally blocked. When everything calmed down, Leng Shiqi's body finally couldn't hold on anymore. He automatically removed the beast essence battle patterns of the Spirit Ruin Beast King and the Silver Scale Fire Armored Crocodile. The moment he removed the beast essence battle patterns, he felt powerless and suddenly collapsed to the ground. He felt bursts of pain coming from his body. It was as if his bones and meridians were being torn apart. Not only that, but there were also countless small bloody marks on his body. What was worse was that both his spirit force and mental force were almost exhausted. It could be said that he didn't even have 10% of his combat strength left. Leng Shiqi quickly took out a few pills and swallowed them. At this moment, he couldn't care about the side effects. He continued to forcefully maintain the supercilious eyes, and wanted to see the situation. What made him feel relieved was that the spirit force and aura of the fused blood beast were completely gone. It was truly dead. At this moment, he let out a sigh of relief. He looked around. Including the 3 of them, there were still 4 people alive. They were Delta Origi Chen, Xiongming and Qingyan. At this moment, there were only 7 people left on the entire Blood Mist Island. However, just as Leng Shiqi was about to retract his eyes, the corners of his eyes suddenly twitched. He had clearly seen 7 people just now, but now there was an extra person who had appeared out of nowhere. And that person was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he was behind one of them. Behind Hua Lingling. Chapter 126. Leng Shiqi suddenly felt a chill on his back. Just as he was about to warn her, he heard a poochie sound. A figure had strangely appeared behind Hua Lingling, and a sharp dagger had already pierced her back. Puff! Hua Lingling coughed out a mouthful of blood, and the vitality in her eyes quickly dissipated. At this moment, Yushu's mind went blank with a boom. Hua Lingling! Yushu's eyes instantly became bloodshot, and he turned to look at the person who had attacked. Leng Shiqi also saw this person, and was very surprised to find that this person was Yan Feilin. In Leng Shiqi's impression, Yan Feilin was a person with a very low sense of existence. He was like an old dog by Qin Yan's side, obeying only Qin Yan and never having his own opinions. Leng Shiqi vaguely remembered that during the battle with the fusion blood beast, Yan Feilin seemed to have been sent flying. Everyone thought he was dead. After that, Leng Shiqi's attention was focused on the fusion blood beast, and he didn't pay much attention to the others. However, he never would have thought that Yan Feilin had been hiding himself the entire time. He had watched the fusion blood beast fight, and waited for the dust to settle before stabbing them in the back. Was he not afraid that the fusion blood beast would kill everyone? Now that the fusion blood beast had just died, the few people who survived immediately began to fight among themselves. Yushu was extremely angry and filled with hatred. The moment he attacked, blade energy filled the sky and swept toward Yan Feilin like a torrential rain. For Yan Feilin, his target from the beginning was the Yushu clan. The reason he chose Hua Lingling was because Yushu and Leng Shiqi were both at the spirit transformation realm. Even if they were injured, Yan Feilin wasn't confident he could kill them in one blow. That was why Hua Lingling was the best target. However, when he saw Yushu's torrential blade light descending, his heart shook. Immediately after, he hurriedly moved his body and dodged those blade lights. It turned out that he had also cultivated a movement spirit technique, and it didn't look like it was a low-rank one. However, Yan Feilin didn't expect a few thick pillars to rise from the ground under his feet. Normally, these things wouldn't be able to trap him and he could break free at any time. However, right now he was under Yushu's blade energy, and a small mistake could cost him his life. Yushu and Yan Feilin's battle was only one side. After Yan Feilin's sneak attack on Hua Lingling, everyone began to move. Xiongming and Qingyan were to attack to kill Leng Shiqi and Yushu respectively. Xiongming was very fast. He suddenly appeared before Leng Shiqi and slashed down with his two purple blades. Leng Shiqi sensed danger the moment Xiongming moved. He turned around and hid behind the ice wall from before. At the same time, he waved his hand and a purple crow appeared before him. The crow flew toward Qingyan and stopped Qingyan, who was charging toward Yushu. This purple crow was naturally the purple feather. In fact, not long ago, Leng Shiqi had discovered that the purple feather could be placed in the system space. However, after thinking about it, he understood that the purple feather didn't have an independent consciousness. It wasn't a living thing, so it could be placed in the system space. Ever since entering the blood-colored tower, Leng Shiqi had never used the purple feather because it was his only trump card that didn't consume spirit force. The other was of course the righteous thunder orb. It could be said that the purple feather was his last trump card. The purple feather played a key role in this moment. It bought a lot of time for Yushu. While they were fighting, something happened to Delta Origi. Delta Origi was heavily injured in the battle with the Blood Fiend. She was now covered in blood. She couldn't even stand properly and spat out a mouthful of blood. Ah Chun, who had been standing beside her, suddenly slammed his palm toward Delta Origi's head. However, a strange scene appeared. The blood that Gu San spat out did not land on the ground. Instead, it instantly condensed into a blood arrow in the air. With a whoosh, the blood arrow pierced Ah Chen's heart. Ah Chen's palm suddenly stopped. He looked at Delta Origi in disbelief and muttered, "You've been guarding against me for a long time." "That's right," Delta Origi said coldly. "Why? I'm so loyal to you. Why would you suspect me and guard against me?" Ah Chen knew that he didn't have time, but he still didn't understand. He didn't want to die without knowing why. He had joined Delta Origi ever since they established the Blood Moon. He had always followed Delta Origi and sacrificed a lot for her. He had never done anything out of line. He really couldn't understand where he had exposed himself. Delta Origi walked to his side and whispered, "You're too loyal. I won't trust someone who's so loyal on Blood Mist Island." "Haha. It's because I'm too loyal that I'll be suspected. Delta Origi, one day you'll die from your own suspicion and arrogance." Ah Chun fell to the ground weakly after saying this. The battles all happened at the same time. When Ah Chun fell, Yan Feilin was also restrained by Leng Shiqi's hand of earth. Yushu's blade light swallowed him up. Even though Yan Feilin had movement techniques, he still couldn't dodge. His body was covered in blade wounds and he died in the end. Leng Shiqi hid behind the ice wall. When he saw that Yushu had taken care of Yan Feilin, he felt a bit more at ease. However, in the blink of an eye, the ice wall in front of him was cut into several pieces. Two purple scimitars were right in front of him. Leng Shiqi didn't dodge. Instead, he pulled out his spirit sword and stabbed out 4 times. 2 invisible channel invading sword energies, and 2 light blue frost sword energies shot out. Meng Ming swung his dual blades and shattered the frost sword energies. However, the other two channel-invading sword energies stabbed into his lower abdomen. After the channel-invading sword energies entered his body, they immediately sealed off the meridians in his abdomen. One had to know that the lower abdomen was where the Sea of Qi was located. When that area was sealed, most of Meng Ming's spirit energy was sealed. Of course, Meng Ming could still use his spirit energy to break the seal, but that would take time. Of course, Leng Shiqi wouldn't give Meng Ming time to break the seal. He raised his sword and was about to stab out when something unexpected happened. Purple Feather, who he'd sent to hold off Qingyan, had fallen limply to the ground. Black smoke and sparks were rising from his body. Qingyan's hands were covered in a layer of faint flames. However, he was in great pain as well. His palms were slightly charred. It seemed that he'd used some kind of secret technique to kill Purple Feather. Leng Shiqi had thought that Qingyan was already heavily injured. Even though Purple Feather was a level lower than him, he should have been able to hold off Qingyan. However, in this world, there was no such thing. Leng Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. Purple Feather wasn't sentient. In other words, it was an inanimate object. It was no different from a puppet. However, it had followed Leng Shiqi for a very long time. During the days when he cultivated alone, it was always Purple Feather that comforted him. Leng Shiqi didn't know what kind of feelings he had for Purple Feather. In any case, he was going to avenge its death. Intense killing intent flashed in his eyes. He first exchanged a glance with Yushu. Yushu nodded in tacit understanding, then swung his blade at Meng Ming. Meanwhile, Leng Shiqi walked toward Qingyan with his sword in hand. Chapter 127. When Qingyan saw Leng Shiqi walking over with a strong killing intent, he felt a little guilty. At this point, everyone had used up their trump cards and their spiritual force was almost depleted. It was time to fight. Unfortunately, Qingyan's foundation as a spirit transformation realm cultivator was not stable. Also, he had personally witnessed Leng Shiqi severely injuring the fusion blood fiend. It could be said that without Leng Shiqi, they would have already died in the mouth of the fusion blood fiend. Therefore, he was not confident that he could stop Leng Shiqi. At this moment, he caught a glimpse of Delta Origi who had killed a Chun. An idea flashed through his mind. He quickly said, Delta Origi, there are only 2 people left from the Yushu clan. Let's join forces to kill this person and keep the Yushu clan in check. Then we'll fight to the death. Delta Origi held the green sword with a thoughtful expression. Seeing Delta Origi's reaction, Qingyan was happy. He knew that there was hope. He continued, Delta Origi, if you help me kill this person, I'll take you as my master. I won't go back on my word. Okay, but if you go back on your word, I'll make you wish you were dead, Delta Origi said coldly. Hearing Delta Origi's reply, Qingyan was overjoyed and felt more confident. Delta Origi. Leng Shiqi's face suddenly became a little twisted. He shouted, Qingyan and I are settling our grudges. Why do you have to interfere? Delta Origi pointed at him with the green sword and said, You can only blame yourself for being a member of the Yushu clan. After saying that, a sharp sword light burst out from the 3 bone swords and pierced straight at him. Qingyan threw out a punch and a palm respectively. 2 blazing waves of spiritual force blasted over. Leng Shiqi was being pincered. He hesitated and decided to meet force with force. His spirit sword moved, and like a startled swan, it pierced towards the Delta Origi. Clang! Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi's swords clashed. Both of them were able to block each other's swords, and neither of them could do anything to the other. Qingyan thought that this was an excellent opportunity. The speed of his fist and palm increased by a bit, and just as Qingyan was about to reach him, something that shocked him happened. Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi, who were originally fighting, suddenly turned around and stabbed at him at the same time. At this moment, Qingyan turned pale with fright. However, the distance between them was too close, and he had no way of dodging. Qingyan had no choice but to stake everything on this one attack. The power of his fist and palm increased by 30%. However, strangely, the figures of Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi disappeared from his sight at the same time. Qingyan's heart skipped a beat, and he knew that something was wrong. Sure enough, in the next moment, two swords pierced through his back and pierced through his body. It was not until he died that he realized that Blood Moon had joined forces with the Yushu clan. Sadly, he was just overjoyed that he managed to win over the Delta Origi, but in the blink of an eye, he was killed by her sword. Everyone's battle started quickly and ended quickly as well. From Yan Feiling's sneak attack on Hua Lingling to Qingyan's death, it only took a short time. Sneak attack, alliance, betrayal, counterattack. Everything happened in a flash. After Qingyan fell, Tong Ming, who was fighting with Yushu, felt his heart turn cold. There were only 4 of them left, and 3 of them were on the same side. The only ending that awaited him was death. Sure enough, Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi drew closer with their swords. At that moment, a buzzing sound came from the ground, and 2 5-meter-wide formations appeared. Mysterious runes flowed on the formations, but one of them was purple, and the other was golden. This sudden development caused Leng Shiqi and the others to stop. They looked at the 2 formations, and a myriad of thoughts flashed through their minds. Actually, it had been less than 10 minutes since they killed the fused demon beast. These 2 formations should have only appeared after the fused blood fiends had died. However, what were these 2 formations for? The 4 of them had this question in their minds. Just as they were puzzled, an old voice came from all directions. The last survivors of Blood Mist Island. These 2 formations are the transportation formations to leave Blood Mist Island's secret realm. However, only one of them is a true transportation formation. Make your choice. After saying this, the voice disappeared. Leng Shiqi and the others looked at each other. Hearing this, they were surprised, happy, and angry. They were happy that they had finally reached this step. They were the best of the 10,000 people, and they were only 1 step away from leaving Blood Mist Island. However, they were surprised that the test was still not over. There was still one last step. There was no intense struggle at this step, nor was there any scheming. There was only a choice between the 2. If they made the right choice, they would live. If they made the wrong choice, they would die. This was a test of their luck. Leng Shiqi couldn't help but feel a sense of unwillingness and anger in his heart. Who knew how many bloody storms they had experienced, and how much deception they had experienced? In the end, they had to rely on luck to decide their life and death. The 4 of them looked more serious than the last, and they all fell into hesitation. However, Leng Shiqi immediately calmed down, and kept thinking of a solution. Suddenly, Leng Shiqi's mind lit up, and he thought of a possible solution. Then his gaze fell on Xiongming. Leng Shiqi gestured to Delta Origi, and the 2 of them flashed and suddenly appeared on either side of Xiongming. Then 2 spirit swords were placed on his neck. Xiongming was completely unperturbed. He said calmly, "The winner takes all. Kill me if you want." Leng Shiqi reached out and grabbed the 2 purple scimitars in Xiongming's hands. He had been coveting these for a long time. He then said in a deep voice, "I won't kill you. On the contrary, I'll give you a chance to choose between life and death." Upon hearing Leng Shiqi's words, Xiongming immediately understood his intentions. He snorted coldly and said, "Humph, you want to use me to test which path is the right one? You're underestimating them. I have my own methods. You just have to tell me if you want to or not. If you don't want to, I won't make things difficult for you. However, you're giving up 50% of your chance of survival. Are you really willing to do that?" Leng Shiqi continued. His voice was filled with persuasion. Xiongming didn't hesitate and immediately replied, "If you really have a way, I'll agree." Leng Shiqi smiled and said, "Very well, I'll plant a spirit technique on you later. It'll hurt a bit, so bear with it. Then, you can choose any formation you want to enter." Xiongming nodded to show that he understood. Leng Shiqi immediately formed a spirit seal. Then, a red circle of light appeared on his palm. Within the circle of light, there was a lifelike centipede twisting. With a wave of his hand, the centipede burrowed into Xiongming's left arm. Leng Shiqi purposely chose this place. He was afraid that the perfected centipede curse would cause the heavily injured Xiongming to die from the pain. After the centipede curse entered his body, Xiongming's face was filled with pain. A layer of cold sweat appeared on his forehead, but he gritted his teeth and didn't make a sound. His eyes were filled with a strong desire to live. His gaze drifted back and forth between the two formations. A short while later, he resolutely walked into the golden formation. Then his figure disappeared. Lung Shiqi hurriedly closed his eyes to sense the centipede curse's existence. If the centipede curse was still there, it meant that Xiongming wasn't dead. The golden formation was the path to survival. On the other hand, the purple formation was the path to survival. A few seconds later, Lung Shiqi suddenly opened his eyes. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.